I'm spreading everywhere. I do not know no limit at all. Yes, I'm spreading everywhere, like the air. Whoa, I'm spreading everywhere. I'm a seed of Abraham.
More music on trendybeats.com.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. Like I promised, we were to start in like 5 minutes. Well, 5 minutes from the time I posted. So let's kick off. Thank you all for joining. Please, if you haven't renamed your device, kindly do so with your first and last name, so it's easy for me to identify you. We could just start with dropping where you are joining us from, if you don't mind. I can see some familiar names. You could just drop it in the chat. Just let us know where you're joining from. Hmm. Okay, welcome. Abuja, Oyo, Lagos. Uh, okay, I see Lagos again. I see Ondo State, Abuja, Lagos and Abuja. Looks like Abuja and Lagos people are the ones. They are the ones feeling up. Oh, Niger. Oh, great. Good to see you, Comfort. Uh, hello, Lukman. It's good to see you. Hello, Andrew. Hello, Deborah. Hello, Roslyn. Hello, Tomiwa. Tomiwa, it's good to see you. Dr. Aaron, good to see you. Welcome, everybody. Timileyin Alabi, welcome. Ayomide from Lagos. Victory from Lagos. Uchenna from Abuja, welcome. Onife, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining. Welcome. Hello, Maya. Good to see you. Welcome. Inimbom, thank you for joining. Welcome. Okay, let's go ahead to start. So, for those who had watched my video or the video that accompanied the post for this webinar, you would have more context, right? You would have more context as to why this webinar is even holding in the first place. And I think it's good to reiterate it again. But before I start, I'd like to welcome my co-anchor, Goodness. Thank you, Goodness, for joining. And I bet we'll all have an amazing time today. We'll have 2 hours together. And then, yeah, 6 to 8, we should be done. Except there are overlapping questions or extra questions that come along, but then we'll just try to keep it to 2 hours. So I'll move very quickly. Just give me a second, please. No overlapping, multiple questions I meant to say. I just thought about it. This just kind of provides an overview of the people we have in the room. And then for those who registered, I think I had about 12 countries of residence, if I'm not mistaken. But thank you so much to those who shared the post. Thank you to those who registered. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So we move. I'll just like to start by giving some more context to the webinar, and it's pretty much captured around this forum. Yeah. Two main objectives. Let me put it that way. First of all, practical strategies. I know a lot of people registered because they wanted to do this, particularly because, or rather, they wanted this, particularly because it's scholarship o'clock. Anyways, a lot of scholarships are open during this period. But like I said in my video, we're focusing more on telling practical stories of God's intervention in assessing these opportunities. Not, of course, we're going to touch on the strategies, we'll touch on the tips, we'll touch on the tricks, but our focus will really be on telling you guys real stories of how God showed up for us. Tangible stories where you can say, oh, this had to be God. If you weren't God, this wouldn't have happened. So just to provide a little bit of context as we move ahead. At some point, we'll take questions and answers, of course. Like I said, the webinar is divided into 2 major sections. Part A focuses on our stories, and Part B focuses on the applications, writing the winning applications. Initially, when I was preparing the slides, interestingly, I started out with tips for writing winning applications, but just thinking through it, I just felt that leading to swap. So we'll start with what I consider more important anyways, and then we'll go into part B of it, which would explore together. And I was saying that there will be 2 parts for question and answers. So like I said, the entire webinar is going to be run over a 2-hour period. The first part would focus on our stories. Myself and Goodness will share our stories, and then would pause to take a couple of questions. And then afterwards, we'll get into part B of the webinar, and then we'll take questions again at the end. So let's dive right into it. But before we do that, I mean, just a little bit of context. Some people might be wondering, oh, okay, who are these people speaking to us? What do they have to say? Why are they the ones talking to us and all that? This is just sort of to give a summary of my profile. I'm currently with NESG, and what I do there is essentially project management. Let me not bore you with the plenty grammar, but it's the NESG is a think tank, and it's focused on improving the Nigerian economy, making it more competitive, market-based, and open. And before that, I had worked with Kaduna State government for a year. I worked with Malam as a special assistant, and I worked across 4 agencies, 4 ministries and agencies. I worked in education. I worked in rural water supply and sanitation. I worked in planning and budgets, and I worked in enterprise development. And before then, for those who know, I used to work in a bank. I was in risk management for about 4 years, thereabouts. So this is like a summary of where I've been and what I've done and where I currently am at. And to also let you guys know that my co-speaker, I'm so proud of her. I don't know if I've ever told her before, but I'm so proud of you, Goodness. And thank you, thank you, thank you for offering to be a part of this. It means so much to me. I imagine that the conversations we used to have around why we even got together are beginning to materialize now. But thank you, and thank you for doing this with me. So like I said, I'll just dive right into it, the main business of the night. So like I said, it's kind of impossible for me to separate my journey.
You're on mute, Oyin Counselor.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. So I was saying that it's impossible for me to separate my journey or to divorce my journey from my faith, like I highlighted earlier. And I think everything, looking back at maybe 2019, since 2019 to date, I can literally just pinpoint areas where I know this could only have been God. A lot of people know bits and pieces of the story, but I'm not sure. I think this is the first time I'm actually like chronicling the story, for want of a better way of putting it, and then clearly identifying how in this area God has done this, in this area I've seen favor, in this area I've seen wisdom. I've been in places where I might ordinarily not have the opportunity to be in. I've spoken to people that I might not have had the opportunity to have spoken to, and all that. So it's within that context that I'll be sharing some of these stories and the examples that I'll be sharing with you all tonight. But before we get there, let me just, again, for better context, as a believer, I'm Christian, right? I'm Christian. And of course, I'm guided by the Bible, the Word of God. And there are key scriptures that I felt to share with us to kind of give a better context when I'm sharing some of these stories, because these scriptures have pretty much shaped my experiences. And because I hold them so valuable, I hold them to be so true. I've literally seen them materialize. I've seen them surface in many of these experiences that I've had. So first of it is, I mean, in no particular order, obviously, but first of it is, I am what I am by the grace of God. It's in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 10. It says, I am what I am by the grace of God, and his grace towards me was not in vain. On the contrary, Paul was saying here, he said, I even worked harder than any one of them. And then he says, yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me. And my understanding of this is Paul is trying to paint a picture saying that I work hard. Like, obviously, I do work hard. We see it for those who are Christian, you see Paul's body of work. You see the level of commitment he puts to the gospel. But he's saying to us here that within that context of hard work, I'm not working outside the grace of God. And the reason why this particular scripture is important for me is it addresses notions around, oh, I mean, God's grace is sufficient for me. I don't need to do so much. Once I just pray, once I just, some of these ideologies and idiosyncrasies that some people have. But here, this scripture is for me, I interpret it as the reason why the grace of God is even with me makes me work even harder. So in terms of putting in the hard work, doing what needs to be done to achieve what I want to achieve, I put in the hard work, but I put in the hard work within the context of God's grace. Then the second scripture says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. And I'm highlighting certain words in these scriptures just to make the picture clearer for everyone. This is in Ecclesiastes 9, verse 10, and it's from the NIV. It says, whatever it is, do it with all your heart. Obviously, it also mirrors the point Paul was trying to make in the previous scripture. It means that everything you find to do it well, give yourself to it, be diligent. And the third scripture also, I'll just run through this very quickly. The third scripture also highlights the place of working hard, but also not despising small beginnings, you know. And then this scripture says, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin, to see the plumb line in Zerubbabel. I put your hand there, I put my hand there. The point is, it might be in little things, or you have the opportunity to volunteer here, for instance, or you have the opportunity to intern in this organization. Do it with all your heart. And then don't despise it as a humble beginning, because I can tell you that for myself and goodness and a lot of other people that you might look up to, these are the things that aggregate, the little things that you do and you tend to trivialize are the things that eventually aggregate into something really big. Then the fourth scripture says, the Lord has kept the heavens for himself, but he has given the earth to us humans. This scripture is particularly important because of people who tend to despise other human beings, people generally. Despise in the sense that, I don't know if you guys have heard people say things like, I don't need anybody. I can do this by myself. I can, I've got this. I've figured this out by myself. Nobody, obviously, no man is an island anyways. But then just to highlight that it's really important who likes you. It's really important to have social capital. It's really important to build community. We can't escape from this because the way the world is designed in a way that human beings, people are the ones who rule the world. Let me put it that way. So if you are the kind of person who believes that you don't need anybody to achieve anything, Selah. Then the second to the last scripture says, and the elders of the Jews prospered, and the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo. Yeah. The points I want to highlight in this particular scripture is, for me, I have seen time and time again where I am literally a product of the prophesying of my prophets. Let me put it that way. I'm literally a product of words spoken over me. So who speaks over you matters. And this particular part is important because people just feel, oh, I can do things by myself. I can be by myself. I don't need, some people believe, oh, I can just be by myself. I don't need to belong to any community, any local assembly. I can just do things all by myself. Well, by the time you hear our stories, you understand why some of the scriptures are important. And of course, the last scripture also closely mirrors the second to the last, which says, believe in the Lord your God and you'll be established. Believe in his prophets and you will succeed. Me, I believe in my prophets. I really do believe in my prophets because I've seen my prophets' words find expression in my life. And some of these things you would see as I go along. So just for better context. Okay, so let's move to the next point. I decided to make this presentation across a timeline of say 5 to 6 years. And the reason is simple. Much of what I've achieved has been within the space of 5 to 6 years. And a key milestone year for me was 2019. And for some of those who know me, well, more personally, you would understand why 2019 is that key year for me. That was me in 2019. I was enjoying myself there. This was me in Zaria. I was in Zaria then attending Koinonia School of Ministry at the time. And I was just chilling and having fun after I had resigned my banking job. Like I said earlier, I used to be in the bank. I used to work in the bank, but I had just technically not resigned, but then, yeah, I had taken a leave of absence from my banking job. So that was me in Zaria during School of Ministry. And I just wanted to ask a quick question. Does anybody know, first of all, what's this image here? The image just underneath my 2019 picture. Can anybody just tell me? You could just type it in the chat. Let me see. DNA, yeah. I don't even know whether it's DNA or RNA, but yeah. DNA. But do you know why that picture is there? Any idea? Someone said celebration. Celebration, okay. Oh, do you mean like celebration, like the chocolate celebration? Anyways, it's actually DNA. Yeah, it's DNA. But I'm just curious, does anybody know why I would put DNA under that picture? Any idea? DNA of Christ. Well, not exactly, but I mean, I could willingly accept that. I found myself, not really, not really. Let me see. You have a background. Yes, thank you so much. Too. I have a background in biochemistry because I know somebody has asked me before, like, oh, how are you able to do this? You're in public policy, you've done this, you've worked in as a public servant, you work in a think tank now. How are you able to do all of this? And the person was like, oh, you have a first degree in biochemistry. How did you cross? How did you? And I'm like, it's a lot to explain. Obviously, it's not conversation for tonight, but the reason why I put it there was to sort of highlight that point because for some people on this call, your challenge might be, oh, I have a first degree in this. How am I able to switch to XYZ? I want to move into this space. How do I go about it? This and that and that. You know, I know a lot of people face those kind of challenges, particularly from this part of the world where a lot of people study what they are not doing now. Let me put it that way, because for me now, I won't even call myself a biochemist. I just studied biochemistry. I never saw DNA or RNA or, yeah, like live. I just read about them. So this is just kind of to encourage you that you really can do anything. You can, as long as you put your mind to it. It might sound cliche, but these things are true because, I mean, I'm a product of that. With a first degree in biochemistry, now I'm in a think tank. There's no such thing. They don't need a biochemist there, but for some reason I'm there because obviously, again, like I said, I won't call myself a biochemist. So yeah, before 2019, I think I had mentioned that I used to work in a bank. I was in risk management, and I just kind of got tired. I won't, because of time, I can't even go into the details of that story, but let's imagine together that this is my starting point. 2019, I was here in Zaria and I was attending Koinonia Global School of Ministry. And shortly after that experience, I think it was between January and roughly September 2019, I just knew, I had the feeling, not just a feeling, I had a deep conviction within me that I needed to stay in the north. Born and bred in Lagos, spent all my life in Lagos. 2019 was the first time I was leaving Lagos, like relocating, and because School of Ministry was, I think, about 6 or 7 months, you know. So after the program, I just knew my time in Lagos was over. But then I didn't know how to remain in the north because there was no basis for remaining in the north. I had opportunities to go back to Lagos and take back my banking job. In fact, my boss at the time offered me an opportunity to go to another bank of my choice, even if I didn't want to stay in my current bank at the time. But I just knew the time was up. So I told him, you know what, sir, thank you for your kind gesture, but I'm not going back to the bank, you know. And then again, I was saying, I didn't even know what to say. I didn't know what excuse to give to remain in the north. So guess what the perfect excuse was? If you think you know the perfect excuse, you can just drop it in the chat. It'd be interesting to know. What do you guys think was the reason why I eventually stayed in Zaria? What was my excuse? Or how did I find my way around it? Probably those who know me might might be able to answer that question. Uh, to attend opinions. Opinions? Come on, someone said transport fare. No, 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 it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. Exactly. Oh, ABU's area. Okay. Well, yeah, absolutely. That was it. So school was my excuse. School was the excuse I gave for staying back in Zaria, even though I never completed that program. So I stayed back in Zaria and enrolled for a PGD in Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. For those who know ABU in Nigeria, you know. And not long after we registered and were ready for classes was when COVID struck. That was in 2019. Sorry, 2020. 2020 February. If I'm not mistaken, 26th or so, February 26th was when, or was it March? I don't recall. But anyways, that was when the lockdown happened and everybody had to stay in their houses, you know. Literally, the world, let me put it that way, the world shut down because of COVID. Now imagine that I was in Lagos and COVID happened. Obviously, I would have had to be at home in Lagos, but I was on lockdown in Zaria in 2020. And honestly, I don't even recall what happened, how I came across the Kashim Ibrahim Fellowship, which is what you see in the next picture. That was me on graduation day at the Kaduna State Government House with the then Deputy Governor. Well, she's still Deputy Governor now in this administration, but yeah. The point is, I applied to KIF. I can't remember whether, because I didn't even have a laptop at the time. I really don't recall, but I do know that somehow, maybe I applied with my phone or something. Anyways, I got in. Obviously, if I was back in Lagos, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. You know, I may have applied or it may never have come up. I may never have seen it. But anyways, I applied and I got in, and I spent the next 1 year with Kaduna State, where I worked as special assistant to the governor. I would explain why
I'm
there's
just
also
going
this
into the
compass on
chronicled.
my
Before disturb am, but could they disturb am?
please can you mute your mic for those there's someone speaking, except you are trying to ask me a question. Okay, thank you.
Don't worry, I muted him.
Okay, thanks. So let me move very quickly. There's a reason why this compass is there, and I'll explain. Long story cut short, after my KIF experience, while I was in KIF, KIF was for a year, rounding off in KIF. What next? Do I go back to Lagos? Do I go back to Zaria? Because KIF was in Kaduna City, not Zaria. Of course, both of them are in Kaduna State, but Kaduna City and then Zaria City. I retained my house in Zaria, so I still had a place to go to after KIF. But then I was like, okay, so going back to Zaria, what next? You know, just leaning into God and what's the next phase of my life? What's the next thing to do? And then I got the opportunity that now got me the job I'm currently working at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. It was a volunteer role, and I applied for it just like any other opportunity. I applied for it, and based off of the experience I had working as a public servant in Kaduna State, it was kind of easy to scale through the application. Let me put it that way. And then I got into NESG, but as a volunteer. So I started out with NESG as a volunteer. And interestingly, the team that I was posted to, that I was assigned to as a volunteer, was focused on like subnational government. So bringing the experience I had with Kaduna State as a state government in Nigeria made me sort of easily blend into the work in NESG at the time. And then I had this team lead who was diligent. We had a couple of other fellows like myself, volunteers like myself, were working together. And then at some point, he was leaving the NESG because he was advancing his career and all that. And then he just said to me, I think you can fill up my role. And I'm like, huh? Fill up your role. I'm only but a volunteer who is doing this for the first time. You know, where do I even start from? I really don't even know what to do, you know. But then, long story cut short, that was how I got into the NESG. That was how I got into the NESG. And somewhere along the line, again, I applied to IMF. Now, interestingly, the application process for IMF required some experience or demonstration of interest along key thematic areas. I think there was climate change, there was economic inequality, there was, I don't recall now, but one of those thematic areas was part of what I did when I was in Kaduna State, because like I said, I worked in the planning and budgets ministry, which kind of focuses on economic planning, budgeting, and all that. So I just literally carried that experience from my time in Kaduna State, bearing in mind that all I had done before Kaduna was banking, risk management, essentially. So I took that experience, packaged it, and applied for IMF. And one thing I noticed was at the point of applying, no, not at the point, after applying to IMF, there were a couple, maybe after maybe 1 or 2 months, I can't remember though, but I noticed that someone from the IMF viewed my LinkedIn profile. So when I saw it, I'm like, okay. I didn't take it with levity. I just started to speak. Like I started to speak words. Okay, whatever this means, Lord, have your way. Whatever this means, do what only you can do. And so when the email came in saying that I was selected, it was, I didn't know what to say. Out of about maybe 4,000 or so applications. Anyways, that's how I got into IMF, and I did that bit while I was still working in the NESG. By then I had transitioned, early 2022, I had transitioned into a permanent role at the NESG. And then not long after that, I got into Chevening. I went to the UK for my master's. But I would also want to share something about the Chevening experience. And I'm sure Goodness can relate to this. At the point of applying, well, yes, a lot of people here on the call, I'm sure you've known about Chevening. For some people, it might even be Chevening that is the reason why you even joined, you registered for this webinar, and that's fine. But then after applying, the typical process is, I think the entire Chevening application spans like 8 to 9 months. So it's kind of, there's a lot of trepidation happening. You wait, you pray, you do all sorts of things. Anyways, so I get to the point of interview, and this was the part where I met goodness for the first time at the interview. That was in Abuja. And then we were sitting and waiting. The children interview, for those who have read about it or are familiar with it, it's like a panel interview. So we go in and then you sit, everybody sits, all the applicants or the candidates sit and wait for their turn. And then the room that I was supposed to enter into, was the previous candidate was taking a lot of time, you know. So they had to kind of like move me to another room, another panel room. And I was like, okay, let's see how this goes, you know. I went in with confidence. I sat, we had a conversation. Now, this is the part where it gets interesting. First of all, the school, I think it was the first school I chose for Chevening, if I remember correctly, uh, was UCL. And the chief panelist in that room went to UCL. The course I chose was public policy. That was the course he did at UCL. So there was already that, that connection. And he was so excited when he saw that I had applied to UCL to study public policy, so we had already established that connection. So then we got talking during the interview, asked me questions, I answered, did da 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 da. It looks like a good interview. And after the interview, you are supposed to be escorted. So someone on the panel has to escort you out of the room because you need an access card to get in or get out of the room. Let me put it that way. So this man escorts me to the room and then gives me out of the room, gives me a very firm handshake and says, greet your boss. I know your boss. And he mentioned my boss's name at the office. And then he says, greet your boss for me. And, I just smiled. Of course, I didn't greet my boss. But anyways, and that was it. But the part I wanted to really bring out to highlight some of these experiences or some of the things I had highlighted when I was trying to frame the context is, one, I shouldn't have entered that room. Based on the arrangements that we had in terms of how we arrived at the venue, the interview venue, I should have entered another room. But then again, if I had entered the other room, I may not have met someone on the panel who went to the school I wanted to go to and who studied the course I wanted to study. Again, I may not have met someone who knew my boss at the office and by extension knew the work that we did in the office. So it was easy for him to relate with some of the answers I was given while I was sharing my experience and while I was answering the questions. It was easy for him to relate to it. I know some people might feel, oh, these things don't matter. But again, refer back to one of the scriptures that I shared before I started sharing the stories, which is that the earth, the heavens of the heavens belong to God, but he has given the earth to the sons of man. Ultimately, we're a product of the decisions we make and the relationships we're able to keep. So the relationships we establish and we build. And for me, I don't know to what degree that influenced the application outcome, but I do know that the rest they say is history. And that was how I got the Chevening Scholarship and went to the UK for my master's. Let me just quickly round off. So this is 2025 this was me in Arizona State, where I was assigned for my Mandela Washington fellowship. Again, I was in the UK when this interview happened. Well, it was scheduled to happen while I was in the UK. So I had to plead with them to let me get back to Nigeria to have the interview. At the interview, didn't know anybody. And then I remember one of the panelists asked me a very, in quotes, seemingly trivial question. She said, oh, when you go to the US, what are you going to take with you to the US? And what one might call a silly answer was what I actually said. I said, oh, I'm taking my accent. I'm taking my authenticity to the US. I'm not, and then she burst into laughter. The entire panel burst into laughter. They're like, come on, are you for real? I'm like, yeah, I'm taking my authenticity. I'm not going there to say, no, or one agona or something like that. This is authentic me. This is who I am. And I'm taking this along with me to the US. Of course, that wasn't the only thing I said. I mentioned a couple of other things. But anyways, the rest they say is history. That was how I got the Mandela Washington Fellowship, and I went and I returned, and of course, by virtue of being where I am currently working, I had the opportunity to work alongside my MWF experience. So it wasn't a difficult thing to do. I didn't have to like resign my job just so that I could attend the fellowship and all, but it just gave me the opportunity to do this. So let me quickly circle back to the reason why I put the compass there, just to highlight a point. At some point in my life, particularly after SOM, I felt that strong desire to, there was something about the North, I couldn't explain it. It just felt like everything that had to do with the North of something was where I should be at that time, in that season of my life. SOM was in the North, Kaduna State, obviously. Interestingly, this particular season of my life was what informed the school I eventually went to in the UK for my master's. University of York is in the North. And I don't know, I can't, if you ask me to explain, I really don't know, I can't really explain it to you, but I just know that in that period, in that season of my life, I was gravitating towards anything that had to do with the North. And so looking back, I'm like, there must be a reason for this. Me, I know part of the reason, but it's not to share here. Let me just move very, very quickly. But yeah, the point I'm trying to make is also understanding different phases in your life and what God is doing and how God is leading you. It determines the outcome of your life. It informs the kind of decisions that you make. And of course, the decisions that you make will ultimately influence the outcome of your life. So finally, to my last slide before I hand over to Goodness, all of the experiences that I've shared, I would like to summarize them along these like four major or three major aspects. Let me put it that way. First is spiritual covering. I had highlighted it earlier when I was sharing the context that for me, this is such an important thing. I don't believe that any man is an island. I believe in the power of a spiritual covering. I believe in the ability of someone to speak over your life. I believe in the power of words. I believe in being a part of a local community church, right? Not just being in my own house and being in my own church. No. These are the things that have shaped the outcome of my life, right? The same thing with service. The journey since 2019, in between, I can't share the full story, but there were phases and instances, experiences that I've had across that entire timeline that I could pinpoint and say service was a key thing. Service was a key ladder for me, stepping into certain achievements that I was able to, achievements I was able to achieve. But yeah, service was a very important part. Whatever I found to do when I was a volunteer, I gave it my all. The opportunities I had, I gave them my all. And at the same time, I was focused on building community because I understand that nobody's an island. For some people who are applying for global opportunities, for instance, you understand better when we touch on the strategies, the part B of this presentation. But for some people, for instance, is at the point of applying, they start looking for references. Oh, I don't have a reference. Oh, I don't know who is going to write my recommendation letter for me. And many times it's because you've not established any relationship. You've not built any relationship before now. So when you get to the point where you need people, it now becomes weird for you to now go and start asking them, actually, can you please, if you can assist me to write? No. Community is important, building social capital. And the idea is not for it to be transactional. It's not because, oh, one day I know I'll need this person. That's not the idea behind it. The idea behind it is just a shared desire to serve. It's a shared desire to want to add value to other people. And somehow, some way on your journey, you just realize that eventually this thing plays out for your good, not just for your good, but for the good of other people that you are able to help. And so my question to you as I round off is, how do you stand out? Like, if you look at your journey, for those that are currently applying, I know there are people that are applying. Like I said earlier, this is scholarship o'clock period. A lot of scholarship opportunities, particularly Chivnin, is out now. So I can imagine that a couple of people are applying. But my question to you is, how are you able to, some of the things that we had identified in the stories that I had shared, how are you able to apply these things on your journey? How are you able to, what are you doing in terms of serving? What are you doing in terms of building community? How are you being a blessing to the communities that you find yourself in, or the communities that you join rather? What are you doing? How are you going to stand out? So at this point, I would hand over to Goodness. I bet she has a lot to share. And I know, I myself am looking forward to it. And I know that it's going to be, I have my pen and my paper, my notepad ready to listen in. So Goodness, over to you. I'll just work on the slides as you speak.
Thank you so much, Oyin. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Oyin, do you mind going to my profile? I want to start with something from there.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, building from where my wonderful sister has already laid a solid foundation for me. I don't know why she used green for my color, but it's okay. We are Nigerians. That's a good thing. That's on a lighter note anyway. I wanted to show this screen because just a reminder that this session is more of emphasizing how God has helped us, right? So as much as you would look forward to getting those tips, which we hope to share, it is more of a story of our journey of faith and how God is still helping us. So across my career and journey of becoming over the last how many years? How old am I again? And professionally, say over the last 6, 7 years, um, what has been glaring, what has been profound, which hopefully you are able to pick from my story is how God has helped me. And I've been opportune to speak on various platforms, locally, webinars, on-site, international platforms, by the help of God. But one thing that I ensure that is not just in bio, is the last line to my bio, that above all, Ogi is a child of God. Now, it is very easy for us to find ourselves in spaces where you forget who you are, where life questions who you are, or where you have to be not so pronounced about your identity in God and um, showing up in that way. I remember I had an abstract presentation in the middle of my evening year, which I was invited to speak at a conference in Zambia. I flew from London to Zambia, and in addition to that, I had an accepted abstract. So, speaking invite come abstract presenter, and it was a poster presentation. And on my poster, I just like people came by my poster, and I was sharing about my work and what I was presenting, and I posted it later in the day on my WhatsApp status, and I was surprised when people were like, "Goodness, I'm surprised that you still have, even on your poster, like the small caption on your bio that Oge is a child of God." But for me, it's who I am, it's who I embody, and it's also a reminder that in every space I found myself, while people are describing themselves with their zodiac sign or what is to call that thing again, Steph? I've forgotten, boys, all these Scorpio. Anyway, I don't know it, but the only thing I can describe myself is that I'm a child of God, and my faith has been a building ground for me. Only please, you can move on to my picture slide. Okay, so my story, like only begins from professionally, I would say it is that I got into the field of public health. I would say public health chose me. So the first slide is when I graduated in 2021 from the University of Calabar, where I studied public health. And um, this call is not even exhaustive to share my journey into public health for those people who know me as an individual. That course was directive, and I'm going to give a little story to it. So, you know how you are one of the top students in your secondary school, and everybody expect that you should study either medicine, be a lawyer, or an engineer, right? So the career options in front of you are not so much. Yeah, I was among the top students in my senior secondary school, and I found myself in science class. Maybe I chose it, maybe it chose me, all of the above. But the story is that at the point where you're a jambite and you have to choose a course of study, I went to the pure sciences and it was like, okay, medicine, doctor, that's fine. But it was not a fully informed decision per se. But the story in itself is that, yes, I put in for medicine and surgery the first year, University of Padon, and my dad had already made it clear that none of his children would be schooling anywhere outside the western part of Nigeria. So we grew up in Lagos, and he said it has passed Lagos, Ibadan, and maybe too far, maybe Ogun State. Like, okay, Ogun State shares the border with Lagos. So about those three states or Ocean States, that's all. That's all. If you don't want to go to school from those places, forget about it. And he was very clear about it. So it was both security concerns and his personal reasons. So yeah, I did put in for UI and medicine and surgery. And that year, my after writing my post jam, I didn't meet the cutoff mark to get into UI for medicine. I think medicine was like 70, and I was maybe 4 or 5 marks away from the cutoff. And after then, it felt like, hey, what am I doing with my life? But I think if I look back now, it was very naive of me because really, it's just your first jam. People are chesting 7 jam, no shades on anyone. But back to my story. Again, very naive, but at that point in my life, I'm learning not to look down on the feeling of what happened at that point. So you know how you go through something, maybe you were worked up, you were nervous, and when you overcome it or you eventually get over it, you forgot how you feel. I'm learning not to forget those feelings in that present point and not dismiss it. So yeah, I felt confused. I felt what was I doing with my life? I remember talking to some of my friends, and it also rubbed off on my parents. So I remember my mom called my godmother and told her what was going on with me. And she was like, the world has left and transitioned beyond those traditional courses. While they are relevant, the world is looking for people who can provide solutions. And looking at it from a global perspective, her husband was working with the UN then, he still does anyway. She said, how about she studies public health? And that was the first time I was hearing public health. I remember I was just coming back from church, either choir practice or Sunday school preparatory class, one of the above. And then I got back home, and just at the gate, my mom was like, I spoke to your godmother. She said you should look into public health. So I just look at that like, what's public health? It was both from the place of cynicism and also not really knowing what it is. But as a young person who is curious, I went to Google and then I just searched what is public health, and it looked interesting. And I'm like, career opportunities in public health. What can you really do when you study public health, and what are the prospects? So Google was bringing me quite some options. It may not be as optimized as it is now with AI and all, but I got quite some answers, and it looked interesting to me because I could see how the talent God has embedded in me, right? I enjoyed speaking, I enjoyed engaging people, I enjoyed the art of negotiation, talking to stakeholders. Right now, I know all the grammar there is to it, but then it didn't seem like, oh, it's maybe stakeholders brokerage or partnership building or community mobilization or resource mobilization. But I had those pockets of skill set, especially that I had like public speaking skills. I used to do spoken word rendition in my senior secondary school and all. So it sounded exciting that I would not be boxing myself because my biggest fear studying medicine was that I'll just be constrained in one room attending to patients. Trust me, it was scary to me when I was finishing secondary school because that wasn't me. I wanted to do so many things with my life. I still write poetry every now and then. And I was thinking about, oh, the creative part to me, we did that and also seeing public health, how that it is looking at um, addressing population health issues. And then with no shades to being a doctor, right? It's a very prestigious career, which I respect deeply. Um, it's more patient centered, so it's like one-on-ones, which is great. But then when you look at public health from the perspective of the population, it sounded like what I'd love to do and how that it is boundless. So let me stop preaching public health to all of you so that all of you don't go and study public health in the end. We need all the many different careers there is to it. But my story is that it was directional. That my mom engaged my godmother and she mentioned that program. And the Holy Spirit led me to do more research. And in doing that research, that was not even the fact that, okay, go ahead and study public health. We still had to overcome convincing my dad that I should study public health because it's not about the course, it's actually where to study. At that point in time, the institutions in Nigeria that were offering public health were in University of Calabar, which I eventually went to, and ABU. I think ABU had public health for undergrad actually, and Futo, yeah. No, not ABU. I think it's Bauchi State University that had public health. So it's a school in the north, and then Futo, that's the Federal University of Owerri, which is in southeast. For those people who are not joining from Nigeria, that's in southeast Nigeria, and then University of Calabar, which is in the farther south part of Nigeria. So the next year I wrote JAM, I got a very good score, and I didn't put public health. I already know my father, so I just put physiology, and I'm like, maybe I'll do the public health as my master's, and maybe I'll switch from physiology to medicine in my second year so that I increase my chances of getting in because with my past score from my post jam, I could have gotten any other course um aside medicine at the University of Ibadan. So long story cut short, I remember vividly right? Just after writing my jam, I had a dream, and to cut the long story short, in the dream, I remember that my godmother appeared to me and she asked me, "What did you put in your jam?" And I told her, "Oh, physiology." And I was giving all this explanation I'm giving all of you. And she was like, "Why didn't you put public health?" And I was explaining to her. And she was like, "I think you should study public health." Now, this is somebody I had not seen for the last 15 years of my life. The last time I saw her was like 6 or 7 years old, right? And it's not as if we're in touch as such. So I woke up and I don't know where the courage came from. I prayed about it and I felt the lead in that I should walk up to my dad and just engage him, not exactly telling him the dream, but just telling him that I would love to study public health and see what he says, what's the worst that can happen. So with that boldness, and mind you, I prayed. I walked up to my dad and I shared with him that I think I want to study public health. And he said, "Where is it?" I told him the institutions. I'm from Cross River State. Calabar is the state capital of Cross River State. Like, maybe Calabar is not such a bad option. I was shocked because how does this man just like easily get convinced? It has to be the hand of God that convinced him in that way, right? So to cut the long story short, that was the journey to studying public health. I picked up change of course form. I put in University of Calabar, first choice, public health. And on the first list, I got at my admission. And I was excited about the course, not because I knew what it is in entirety, but I felt the leading of God, right? So it is not that I am preaching the gospel of public health. It is that I was leaning on what is God saying? Where's God leading me? Where's God directing me? And for anyone who knows my story, you can see how I have embodied how God wants to use you in the field of public health. I remember that when I was, you know how you come back home after holiday, maybe my 100 level was 100 level, and there was a church member that's back home in Lagos, right? Um, it was like, "Oh goodness, what are you studying?" You know how you're the star girl of your secondary school and all of that. And they all know you in the church. Like, "Oh, I'm studying public health." Like, "Oh, public health. Anyway, in Nigeria, it's not by what you study, God will give you a job." He was partially mocking me and trying to console me that there's no prospect in whatever I'm studying. And I hold nothing against him. But it in no way make me feel less of who I am or less confident of what God was going to use me to do in the field of global public health, which he is currently doing and he continues to do. And I look back now and how almost everybody in the church wants their children to study public health because they see how goodness is trailblazing in that career path. But it is an error that you don't know who and what is leading her, that you want to just follow and you go in and, like some people would say, "Are you sure there's any career in this public health course? What do you even make out of this kind of course?" Right? With no shit on anybody, I still have some of my colleagues who are like my classmates from from my undergrad program, who do not see the value of what the course they study. It's more like this public health self, waiting be the essence. Like it's not as professional as maybe say now saying radiography, blah blah blah. But that's not the story. I'm saying that I can attest to God leading me to study public health. And he did not just lead me to study it, he guided my path, building a career even from my undergraduate studies. Right. So even from my 200 level, I started engaging in volunteering activities, which built my portfolio for the many other amazing things I got to do and the many other amazing wins I got to achieve by the help of God. Right. So while I was studying in class, I was getting like field understanding of what I was learning in class through my engagement with non-governmental organization, community-based organization. Again, being led by God because it was God that was leading me to say, reach out to this organization, tell them you like to volunteer your time. I didn't know it all, but I was happy to just offer my support and my services. And in the course, I grew, I networked, I built my portfolio. I got my first consulting gig as an undergraduate student with no shades on my lecturer, but I was actually earning more than almost all my lecturers while as an undergraduate student. And it didn't happen overnight. It was that I was applying what I was studying. Nobody asked me for my NYC certificate. Nobody asked me for my certificate of graduation because I've not even graduated. I got that gig, I think, in my final year, right? And it had nothing to do with whether I've graduated or not. It just had to do with the competency. And it goes back to say that if God is the one leading and directing your path, you will not fail. My favorite verse of the Bible, I think I should have told Oyin to add it to the lineup, is Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 to 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not upon your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path." Um, yes, there are seasons and there are times where you don't understand what is happening. But if you have sat with God, if you have sat at his feet and say, "God, what are you saying? What are you doing?" see his hand and you will see his direction. And if you're also not trying to impose on him what you want to do, to make his will, to make your own will his will, you definitely see the hand of God and his direction. And again, you also have to hear from God yourself. So while God may use your prophet or your pastor or your sister to speak to you, you also have to go back and say, God, what are you saying to me? Because I remember that in the course of my programs, I mean, I've gotten certain prophecies that I just look at the person and say, okay, I'm not dismissing that this could be from God, but I go back to my father and say, is this your voice? In fact, there are some that I just shut it down immediately because I know it is not God. God is not an author of confusion. That's not what he's saying in that season of my life, right? So I still go back to say that this session is not exhaustive to talk about even my undergraduate days and how God shaped and molded me in that season. How it affirmed my faith. People God brought to my life to provide support at every season, friends, the lecturers, the networks that God brought at every step, the team members that became like organizations that I led and initiatives that I designed projects with. All those people that God led me to, God led them to me. People that helped me, that continue to help me, that formed everything that God was betting in that season of my life with me. It was directional, it was directive. And even the failures, the rejections, they were very, very, very instructive of my life. I would say that there is no way I could have gotten, say, for example, the Diana Award if I hadn't maybe explored certain opportunities and failed in between. I cannot even mention them, right? I had applied to a couple of fellowships. I think from my 200, 300 level, I did not get accepted. And I was also building my research career in that season. So I had submitted some abstracts, some conferences, and they were not accepted. If I look back now, if I'm the one reviewing my application, I'll not accept it. But the story in itself is that God was forming me. God was teaching me what it means to fail early. God was teaching me what it means to fail forward. God was teaching me what it means to stay focused. God was teaching me what it means to not give up, to not throw into the towel. God was teaching me what it means for God to be good, to be a good God when things are not going the way you want it. And I'm only able to pick that lesson because I'm listening to him and I'm saying, what are you saying now? Lord, what are you saying now in this season and in this time of my life? What are you saying? It was instructive. Did it mean that I didn't make mistakes? Did it mean that I did not flop? Did it mean that I did not make God mad at some point in between? No, but it was directive. I don't know why I'm pouring so much into my undergraduate days, but I would say to a very large extent, the foundations of my professional career was built in understanding the directive of God. And I still go back further to speak to how even the skill sets of, say, I'm able to moderate, I'm able to speak, I'm able to engage people came from my church. How that from the children department, from the teenagers department, from the Sunday school department, the services I offered in the house of God gave me the skills to build interpersonal skills, public speaking skills, moderation skills, ability to manage people, name it. Writing skills. I used to write the church, like maybe we're having children's day or teenagers day, I'd write the news and then I'll read it in church. Sometimes I was very shy, so sometimes I would even be crying while I'm reading. My mom would be like, just look at me, just look at me. Those were formative, those were grounded. So when I stand in front of 25,000 people and it seems as if I'm just doing something without thinking about it or how I used to flawless, it started from, for me, I don't know for other people, started from the church, started from the house of God, started from those formative years of grounding, of pruning, of shaping, of forming, and everybody God brought in my life in those seasons. So fast forward now, very, very fast forward. Yeah, I don't know why we added the Diana Award, but I got the Chief Diana Award. Sorry, not Chief, Princess. I got the Princess Diana Award in 2022, which is one of the,
Most of them get
yeah.
some children.
Sorry, let me. If you're not speaking, would appreciate if you mute your mic. Thank you. Okay, back to my story. So yeah, those. So it's just some context. You can do your research, and maybe some of you may be eligible to get the award. Princess Diana Award is one of the There's one grammar they used to call it prestigious, one of the most prestigious award that is given to a young person within the social impact space. And I think the age bracket is from 9 to 24. Now the story is that God was seizing out for me. The year I got the Princess Diana Award, I was turning 24 later that year. But the previous year, the person who recommended me, my mentor, Professor Don Frisno, had reached out and told me, goodness, you would get the Princess Diana Award. I'm going to nominate you, and I know you would get it because you are doing real work. and you're deserving of this. I didn't think so much to it. In fact, I did not follow. So that year passed by when I was 20, when I was 20, 22, going to 23. So when I turned 23, he still followed up again and said he was going to nominate me, and we got the necessary documents and he submitted it. And I remember that I was in the field. I was in Yala local government, where I'm from, in southern Nigeria, when that morning I opened my email and I saw, congratulations, you have been selected for the Princess Diana Award in acknowledgement of the impact you are making in global public health through research, programming, and policy. And I'm like, wow. Like, I saw that email, my dad was around, and I was just shaking because it was unbelievable that this is just the hand of God, right? I don't take it light that everybody's getting this and I get it. No, I saw how God was molding up for me. In that same year, um, I got the ICF. The ICF stands for International Conference on Family Planning. So they have a Trailblazer Award, which recognizes young people who are trailblazers in the sexual and reproductive health space. And that comes with a fully funded sponsorship to attend the conference. It happened in Thailand that year. And ICFP has been one of the, for me, like one of the building convening for me, because it's 2022 to date, the open doors, the increase, and even like job opportunities and engagement that has come out of that conference has been transformational for me. At a point, I'm like, what did this see in me? Like, why is it goodness? Because if I am other trailblazers, right, where 50 of us that were selected from across the world as trailblazers, I think from Nigeria we're three that were selected. I will be wondering that why is there always goodness? What is there to this goodness? But the only thing I can tell in all honesty, that it has to be God, because yeah, I show up in meetings, I make my contributions, I volunteer my time, I am happy to take on whatever responsibility there is, and I'm happy to support, I'm happy to give it my best. I could say other people do the same thing, but I saw it as instructive that God was leading and directing my path. So much more that even when they had the mentorship program for 6 months, and I was paired with a mentor, actually two mentors. There are people who they could not even contact their mentor, or they reached out and there was not that connection between them and their mentor. But my mentors from 2022 to date still have monthly check-in with me. And these are people that are, if I say, at the highest peak of their career in global public health, which where would I have access to those kind of people? Like, they got interested and invested in me. Did I do my own work? Yes. Because me, I am very, very intentional about nurturing and building relationship. I may not have money to give you, but I would ensure that I am able to follow the guidance you're offering me, and I keep you updated. And I also don't stress you in between, because the mentorship you know keep person. So the story in itself is that I see it, that only by the help of God that those people are still interested in me. They're still answering my email. They're even able to say, oh, please, by all means, reach out whenever you want. Happy to review my application. When I was applying to grad school, one of them even said she would pay for my application fee. And when I went to the US, she was like, we need to see. She got me gifts. I went to Geneva, the other one housed me. That was like the family for me. And I'm like, what's there to me? It was the help of God. It was how God was teaching me to honor people. It was how God was teaching me to be invested, to be diligent, to be committed. In the world, those things are just grammar. Those things are principles. But in the kingdom, it is God's instructions. And when He puts His hand on you, it's not same as if you are doing juju. But back to my story. Evening. Fast forward to 2023. I applied to Chevening for the first time. And I remember that I had looked at Chevening as one of those opportunities that seems very far away, like not that look like me that can get it. But the interesting thing about it is that the people in my circle who I look up to, who have gotten similar opportunities, Chevening and other scholarships, they were reaching out to me to say, goodness, this scholarship is meant for you. You have to apply. In fact, I was almost seeing some of them in my dream. So the only reason I eventually applied was because they were disturbing my life. You know how other people believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And again, I don't know about you, but it has to be that it was God sending those people going ahead of me and pushing them to push me, right? So the valuable support I got from my network, and I mean, I put in my own work. I used as I checked as many resources as possible. I reached out to them, gave them early notice, they reviewed my essays, and they were very reassuring. Many of them were like, I remember one of them was like, these courses you are choosing and these schools, why did you choose them? Like my first essay, And I told her that, I'm just thinking like maybe I should just choose schools that are easy to enter because I feel like all these top schools may be difficult for me to get admission. So she was like, goodness, do you know who you are? Have you seen your profile? Have you seen the things you have done? You are meant for Ivy League school. Now go and search what are the top programs and institutions in the UK in your field of study, that is global public health or any area you want to look at, and only apply to the top three schools in in that place. And in my head, I'm like, what's this person saying? Like, I'm just trying to look for something that is easy and I just get admission so that in case Chivin converts to SA, I would have conditional offers to provide to them. And she said, no, I have to go back. And she didn't just speak those words, she was speaking life to me. Like the role she played in redirecting my thoughts to who I really am, the daughter of the Most High God. That if they are picking anybody in any of those Ivy League schools, top schools in the UK, it has to be goodness because she has seen who I am, even though in my small mindedness, I was trying to form humble, not exactly forming humble, but trying to maybe speak less or play low or however the grammar is. But yeah, that was one of the many instructive ways God was using people in my achievement journey. That is the application of the essay. Because by virtue of that advice, and I went to do my research, I put in the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and London School of Economics, which is London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine is like the number one in the UK when it comes to public health, and in the world it's number two. So second to Johns Hopkins University. That's to tell you how really top it is. Then the London School of Economics is the number one in social sciences. There's any room you go to and you mention LSE, it's like they'll look at you a second time. I've met people who they come to cry to me like, I applied to your school, I didn't get them. I'm like, yeah, sorry, I don't know how I got into. But the story is that that lady was very was it was God that used her to direct me to where and how God was leading to. So applying to the dual master's program for my first choice, which is those institutions. My second choice was Imperial College. My third choice, I can't remember the school now, but yeah, it's a top school. And I did apply to all three schools and I got an admission into them. And then I went ahead with the dual master's program in LSC and LSHTM. Even getting the admission too, just getting effortless support. Like I'll reach out to my recommenders who are my lecturers or people I've worked with, and it's a no-brainer. They're like, just tell us what do you want us to do? When do you want it? Sometimes it's like short notice, less than 24 hours. They're sending it across, writing my IELTS, the provision, the support. I remember when I wrote my IELTS, I was pressed. Like I had worked back to back. I just came back from Thailand. I had not studied. I studied for just 3 days for that exam. And even that 3 days, if you check it very well, maybe it's not up to 1 24 hours day. And I finished writing that exam and a song was impressed in my heart. I'm trying to remember that song now. I was walking on that street in Port Harcourt singing this song. I'm like, I don't know that I help me. Let this money not just go like this. And when I saw the result, I was just shaking that God, this is your help. This is your grace. Did I put in the work? Yes. But I cannot say that it's just by my own effort that I got that result. And every single step along the way. Now, if we still come back to Chivning, is it the interview? I had my interview in Abuja and I was traveling from Calabar to Abuja. I had already booked my flight when I got the interview invite several weeks before. But then when I got to the airport, I got there at least 1 hour earlier. In fact, I told my staff to take my bag to the airport. I was working, so I left the office and I came to the airport and I was to check in and they told me that they've canceled the flight. Like 30 minutes to check in and there was no other ticket. So long story cut short, the whole drama, the struggle, and eventually making it to Abuja on my interview morning because I had to fly from Calabar to Lagos and then from Lagos to Abuja. They did not give me new ticket, though. It's my own money. But that's a story for another day. But we thank God for provision and God making a way. Getting to the interview, and the whole interviewer is like, are you okay? We learned that your flight was cancelled, must have been a hassle. Like that sense of sympathy and support. But that's not the reason why they gave me the scholarship. They were just showing care and concern. But how that the interview was like I was having a conversation. It felt like I was gisting with some senior colleagues and I was sitting and listening to myself and what I was sharing. Felt like, but I did not realize this thing in this way. What am I saying? And then they were flipping through my passport and like, oh, she's well traveled. How old are you again? I told them you're like surprised. And you've done all these things. And the questions they were asking me were not even like some of the things I had expected. Like projects that I didn't see in quotes significant. They were not big and glamorous. They were not policy that I had worked and launched. They were not maybe some international blah blah blah. No. They were simple things that I did in my years of beginning in quotes. And they were narrowing, they were asking me those questions. And I'm like, God, I see what you're doing. So invariably, after the interview, I had this sense of assurance that God will do it. But the devil still came. I remember a few weeks or few days during the whole period when I think Chibney was already reaching out to people from different countries, but they had not reached out to Nigeria. I was just downcast. I woke up that morning. I and my sister were living together in Calabar, and I was crying. I was telling her that I don't know what's next. And I was really hoping this comes true. And we held hands together, we prayed. And my mom called me and she told me congratulations that she saw me receiving a message and it was good news. And I'm like, okay, no problem. May God bring it to pass. I'm saying this because it was that God has spoken ahead of me, even when the devil tried to bring fear, even when the devil tries to bring hopelessness. And that same afternoon, it was not even up to afternoon, I received the chilling email and I was just crying because it has to be God. Like it almost felt like this may not come through. But God did it in the way that it just showed that it's not by your own effort. There's one prayer point I make personally, and I'm not saying you should make that prayer point, it's at your own discretion anyway, is that God, at no point should any of my win be ascribed to my own efforts. That oh, it is because I worked so hard, it's because I had studied so hard. I don't know for other people, but let it be glaring that this has to be God. And God does it in a way that, like, even in the phase of hoping and trusting for the outcome, I'll be like, hey, but I did not do this, but I did not do this, but I did not do this, but I did this. And when the outcome, God, it's only by your help. It is only by your grace. Like, and it has been defining for me that I go back to my source, that I do not ascribe God's or share God's glory to maybe somebody or something and all. Does God use men? Yes. Has God been using men and women to help and support me? He continues to do that. But I do not share his glory. And that has been intentional about working things in that way. So that was Chivning for me. And my Chivning year was transformational in many ways. I was able to meet amazing people through Chivning, such as my beautiful sister Oyin, and my amazing colleagues. And the decision of even deciding to go ahead with Chivney was also instructive for me because I had applied to other scholarships and I was waiting for the outcome. And I was asking myself, God, but why Chivney? Because one of my mentors told me that, goodness, Chivney does not need you. Don't need Chivney. It's Chivney that needs you. I still don't understand what he was saying, but it's somebody that is prophetic. And when he said those things, I still think about it and I'm like, when the news came through, I'm like, okay, I see what God is saying. But in his full institution, we are still trusting him in that regard. So yeah, studying across two institutions, juggling many other things, working in between, volunteering, and then getting an internship in the WHO Global Health internship program, which was not just like, oh, you just go and intern, you have to apply. I remember applying to like up to 10 internship slots, and I did not hear back from any of them. I had already given up that maybe not people like me they used to select, but eventually hearing back from the Department of Sexual and Reproductive Health and Research and having the interview with them. The interview went in a way that I even feel that they've already selected somebody, that they wanted to tick a box by interviewing me because I made my presentation. After my presentation, they didn't ask me any question. They asked me, do you have any question? I said, is that all? No question for me. I was surprised. So I was one that was even like pushing them to engage and discuss. But later that week, I got the email and I'm like, God, this can't be you. Because the feeling I got out of that interview felt like, no, maybe this is not me. And when I got to Geneva some months later and seeing that it was super competitive and the selection process and how global it can be, it was by the help of God. Is it working with the WHO and at the same time writing my thesis? I was thinking I could work on a project in WHO as my thesis, but that was not possible. I had to do two projects at the same time. My research project to submit to get my master's degree, and at the same time excelling in the policy project I was working with the WHO, the research bit. And there were days I would just be walking in the street of Geneva and like, what have I gotten myself into? God help me. God help me. It was tough, it was challenging, but God sent help. God sent friends, God sent support systems, and God held my hands. God held my hands. And when I saw the result from the paper that I got the distinction, I'm like, how? Because when I was submitting that dissertation, the only thing on my mind is that let me just collect my degree. Or not thinking anything like I know I'll not fail, definitely, but that it will be good enough, like that's good. It was just the help of God. My supervisor was not even answering my emails, and she had gone for her summer break, which is normal and expected. And I reached out to some of my colleagues and they were supportive, like senior colleagues. One of them reviewed it and I had to rewrite the entire dissertation of 10,000 words plus in 3 days. And it felt, what have I gotten myself into? Well, God held me. God held me. God held me. God held me. God helped me. God sent me helpers. God sent me support systems. In the same year, I remember that my friend had reached out and told me, "Oh, I think you should apply for this grant. It's called International Aid Society um seed grants for young people." And I felt like it's been a while I did anything related to HIV, and I'm also very careful not to take opportunities that are meant for, say, people who live with HIV per se. And I was like, I think you may have something valuable to share. And I said, okay. I thought about it a bit and I prayed about it. But the story in itself is that I applied and I was successful during my training year while studying in the UK. I got that grant and I was expected to implement that project in the same year. So I had my internship going. I had my part-time job. I was working with the John Hopkins University going. I had my what's it called? Thesis I had to complete. And I also had this project I had to implement in the Gambia because it was a SRHR project I had proposed working with some partners I had some relationship with. And I was so worried that the grants body would not give me flexibility to implement the project. I prayed about it and I reached out to them. And the way they just accepted, it was still surprising. Like God was just making me feel like, what were you even worried about? Like God, I was literally feeling God's sense of humor because for everything I was worried about, like, hey God, how am I going to do my thesis and then do my internship? How am I going to make the most out of my time in Geneva, like taking the beauty of the city of Switzerland and experience summer? How am I going to also implement my project in the Gambia and make sure it's successful and impactful? God gave me ease and support and affirmation from all the bodies involved. And everyone was like, how can we support you? Take your time. After my internship, I flew to the Gambia, I implemented my project. My team is supportive. It was a success. And I look back and I'm like, why were you worried when you have God? Right. So I'm learning to overthink less in that regard. And it is just instructive, it's a reminder that yes, there'll be more stormy times ahead. There'll be uncertainties. There'll be days where you will question your existence. There'll be days where you question all this work I've been doing. When would it add up? When will it convert? Even the people that are not even doing half of what I'm doing, they are getting all the global wins. They are traveling out, they are snapping in the airport, or they are snapping with Oyibo people. That's some of your fantasies. Not taking it from you. But if it is that you are working with God, if it is that you are trusting in Him, if it is that you are not leaning on your own understanding, God will direct your path. And people will look at you and like, no, there's no other way we can explain your story. This has to be God. It has to be the help of God. It has to be His support. It has to be His directive. Even in this season of my life, like for those of you who are familiar with the space of global public health and development, there's a lot of uncertainties happening to our space and the world at large. But I can still feel that guiding reassurance that have you forgotten? Have you forgotten? It's like count your blessings. Have you forgotten how I led you? Have you forgotten how I showed up? Have you forgotten how I held you when you failed? When you felt like this was not going to work out, how I was present. I am still with you. I am ever present. I'm ever I'm your God. Like in that affirmative reassuring me, like you are sitting down and saying like, no, 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 just fear. I did for you. So I don't know who this may be speaking to. Definitely it is not for everybody. But if there's somebody who is listening to it and you are in that place of despair, you are weary, you're asking God, when will this come through? This thing I'm trusting you, this thing that you led me on, this thing that you instructed me to do. I've been in this place for too long. When will I go to the what next or get that my big yes or that big break? Trust me, God never fails. If it is God you are holding to, He never fails. And it makes all the difference. He shines your face with His favor that people are looking up to it and they're like, this glory is shining, it's blinded. Yes, that is what God does. And I hope that this in some way it's valuable to somebody. I've taken so much of my time. I'm so sorry, Oyin. Over to you.
Not at all, goodness. Thank you so, so much. You have no idea. Thank you for sharing your story. Of course, I can imagine that the time we have cannot even permit us to really get into the nitty-gritties. But thank you so much. Like, I just took down some notes and I wanted to reiterate for those who may have missed some of the vital points she made. Of course, in no particular order, but there was something you said around building a track record in our world today where, well, for want of a better word, the microwave world where everybody just wants things fast. Some people have not built a track record and then they want to get somewhere. I think it's important to also highlight that there's a track record, there's process. Of course, there's the place of favor and speed in certain areas where you seem to move steps ahead in ways that you're like, how did I get here? Oh, there's that place. But typically, God is a God of process. And in your story, you highlighted those parts where you put in the work, right? You put in the work. There were things you had to do. It was from your track record that people could look and say, hey, you are doing so much. It's like you're the one that doesn't believe in yourself. People believe in you much more than you believe in yourself. So it's very important. There's another thing you mentioned, which I had also highlighted, relationships, very important, building relationships. See, I remember when there are just too many stories to tell. We just don't have the time. Even the person who coached me for my evening interview was someone I had met through a boss, one of the bosses in my office, who I had volunteered in her department to do something in her department. And it was off the back of that volunteering experience that we started to build a relationship. And, when I found out that I got evening, the invitation to interview, I reached out to her knowing that she was a Commonwealth scholar. So I reached out to her and said, oh, Ma, this is the situation of things. I need that. Before I even finish talking, she'll like, say no more. I'll talk to this person. And it was this person who coached me. Just one night we spent together. I think it was in Jabi Lake Mall, if I remember. We sat together and we had this long conversation. And when I walked into the panel interview, the way I was speaking with confidence, the confidence, like that scripture that I shared at the beginning, the confidence you have when you are layering your work on God's grace is a different kind of confidence. It's not a bold-faced kind of confidence where you're just coming to, talk. It's a confidence layered on an assurance that you have that everything that you are and can ever be can only be by God's grace. So thank you for sharing that. You also mentioned putting in your own work. You have to put in the work. Well, this is also tied to building a track record. So it's very important. And then you highlighted allowing God to lead. I love, love, love that scripture you shared, Proverbs 3:5-6. It's saying that, like, admittedly, you have your own opinions, but learning to trust God regardless of your opinions and not leaning on them is what guarantees that He will direct your path. You also mentioned that storms can come. Even the Bible says weeping may endure for a night, but joy always comes in the morning. I remember then when I was writing my dissertation too for my master's in the UK, there were times when I cried. There was an experience that I had that even led me into, there are too many stories to tell. That's just the truth. We don't have the time. But thank you, thank you, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. God bless you. I'll just like us to pause at this point. We'll just take maybe like 2 or 3 questions. If you have any questions to share, to ask rather, not share. If you have any questions, please just raise your hand. We'll take a couple of questions before the part B of the presentation.
Oyin, do we want to take the questions together after you make the presentation on the?
Or do you think that would be better off? I see 2 hands, just 2 hands. So perhaps we just address those questions quickly and then we get to the part B. What do you think? Goodness.
That's fine. With
Okay.
just 2 hands, like you said.
Okay, I would ask Wadi. Wadi, let me ask you to unmute and then you can ask your question.
Hi, thank you so much for the insights you've shared so far. So my question is, for the importance of relationships, how did you position yourself strategically to find the people and the community? Because, for example, I'm still in university, so there's only so many people I can meet where I am, and so many people that I can meet where I am that wants to also pursue other opportunities that I want to. Many people are fixated on a particular part of life that's not where I'm headed to. what suggestions would you give to position yourself strategically?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. From my own experience, one thing I found out about relationships is the picture that comes to mind is like a hydra. I don't know if that's the right word, that's the right description, but like they're expansible. Let me put it that way. They're expansible. You might know one person who knows one person who knows another person who knows another person. And then it might look like, oh, the people within your immediate network don't exactly look like where you are headed in that sense. But you'd be surprised that there's one person there that knows someone who is going in that direction. That's one. Another thing I would say is service. For me, the way I would say I positioned myself was literally just born out of a sheer desire to serve. I didn't approach it from a transactional standpoint. It wasn't about, let me find people that I can do this for, then they will do this for me later. No, 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 it wasn't about that. It was a genuine desire to want to serve. And of course, that stemmed from we're Christian, we're children of God, like goodness had identified. It was off the back of who Jesus is. Jesus always desired to serve. He wasn't looking for serving to gain a particular favor in that sense, but it was just a shared desire to help. I have a personal philosophy that nobody who encounters me with a challenge or a problem would leave with that same challenge. I may not have the solution, but I would put you or point you in a direction where you can get that solution. So I wouldn't say like positioning in that sense. It was more of like inside out. Just that shared desire to want to serve, to want to help. And you find out that when you keep engaging with people, one person might know someone, it might not even be in your immediate environment, like people you can see. It might be relationships outside. With the internet now and globalization, yeah, building relationships with people in places where you would never even visit in your entire lifetime. But these things have a way of spreading because of the age that we are in. So, for me, that's how I would, based on my experience, that's how I approached it. Just that desire to serve. That's the way I'll put it. Wanting to help, wanting to be of service to someone, and then a desire to just support. And then the relationship just keeps blossoming, expanding. You get to meet this one, and then this one says he knows this person. I think that's something I also do. If I know someone who is doing something that someone I know might be interested in, I'll try to link you up. So I try to do that. That way I'm expanding my network, and all that. Goodness, I don't know if you have any other thing to add from your experience.
Largely, it's really what you have said. It's really what you have said. I'm a very big fan of what I call horizontal networking, right? So I'm not among the WhatsApp group of people who would go to events and want to network with the top people or the speakers. While those are good, right? It's really great that you are able to meet those top profile people and network with them and build relationships. Most times those people are too busy, they don't have your time, right? And they're also weary of parasitic relationships. So the people that you think they can help your life may not exactly be so. I have the entirety of my story, the wins, the awards, the grants, the achievements, and even the failures. I'm bouncing back from rejection emails as being from my peers who I have built with, who I have nurtured relationships with. They are the ones who will say, I think you should apply for this. I'm happy to review your application. Have you worked on this? The accountability, the support system. So I am intentional about nurturing the relationship with my peers who we are heading in the same direction. The divinely orchestrated friendships, investing in those, right? And those have been the stepping stones, support systems, the people who hold my hands, who clean my tears, who celebrate my wins, who tell me this one, we are going to scatter everywhere, including my sister Oyin. I'm saying this to say, don't look down on anybody. It may be that church member you are sitting next to, who you have not even said hi to because they don't look like it, right? Or it could be that team member, or it could even be that neighbor. Genuinely build relationship with people of value. I'm not saying people of value, I mean valuable relationship. Be that value to them and be discerning. I have had experience where somebody looks like it, and that's not the reason why I'm exploring a friendship with them. When you are coming to the limelight, everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody wants to be a friend of somebody that's making it in life. Oh, trust me, it's a good thing, including me. But the story in itself is that there are certain people that why they look like it, they are not it for you. So the Holy Spirit finds a way to, and I used to pray that prayer. I was like, God, if this is not meant for me, this friendship, this relationship, this person, let there be a disassociation. But when it's answering that prayer, it comes in a uncomfortable way. So the Holy Spirit keeps warning me, and it always is like two electric wire is clashing every time that I try to relate with this person, or the person is even reaching out and all. So these persons, there are certain people that are not aligned with who you are and what God is building into you. So you need to lean to the place of instruction. Even if those people are the ones that can give you global opportunities and all of that. While there are some that God is saying, this is a difficult person, but I want you to learn what it means to work and build a relationship with a difficult person, or to learn under them, or to be submissive to their instruction in that professional capacity, right? So while it is hard, God wants you to build that tough skin and all. So part-time, per season, save your relationship, yield it to God. Let Him be the one to direct you. Not everybody is meant to be in your space. Not everybody is meant to work with you. Not everybody is meant to be that whatever pockets of, familiarity you share with them. And it's fine. You don't have to be enemies. You don't have to burn the bridge. So that would be my addition to what Oyin has shared. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this rate, we might have to just postpone questions. Maya and Deborah, please, apologies. Let's just run through part B of the presentation and then we'll take the questions if you don't mind. Yeah, so let me just share my slides. I know quite a number of people are waiting for this bit. Let's see how we go. Just hang on a bit. Yeah, so I'll just move very quickly. In terms of global opportunities, I mean, there are a whole lot of opportunities from the stories we've shared. Goodness talked about internships, we've talked about fellowships, scholarships, even international jobs. There are people who relocate for international jobs. Some do remote jobs, international jobs. So there are all sorts of opportunities, and there are different approaches to applying to these opportunities, but because of time, we're not going to really get into the details. I'll just move very quickly to general tips, like we had earlier highlighted at the beginning of the webinar. So I'd like to divide this into three major stages. Let me put it that way. You have the pre-application stage, you have during application, and then you have the post-application stage. And I think the first thing I would like to highlight is understanding yourself. Now, in that bucket of understanding yourself, there are a lot of things there. Some of those things have already been highlighted in the stories that myself and Goodness have shared before now. You need to understand where you are at, first of all. You need to understand where you are going, right? Where you are at, where you are going, what you have, and then even your frame of mind. I think that's one of the challenges that quite a number of people have when they're gunning for these opportunities, especially when you're coming from a place of, oh, can this be me? Is this the kind of person? Goodness highlighted some of those things earlier on, like, oh, this kind of opportunities, are they things that someone like me can get? Sometimes it could appear as imposter syndrome. You've actually done the work, like you have stuff that you've done, but you don't see yourself in that light. Maybe you're downplaying what you've done, or you've not just been in environments where people have, for want of a better word, celebrated what you do, So that bit of even understanding yourself, where you are at, what you have, what's your profile in terms of what you've done, where you are at, your frame of mind, all of those things are important in before you even start any application. And this goes to scholarships, fellowships, whatever the opportunity might be, you have to understand yourself. The second thing I'll say is to understand the application. A lot of people trivialize this part. You see an application, oh, the first thing you just look at is eligibility. Once you say that it's between 18 and 35, okay, I'm 25, it means I can apply. There are people, you might think is strange, but there are people that actually do that. Like, they don't take the time to read through the application, and they just look XYZ, okay, I've checked this box, it's fine. And then they just go ahead. First of all, you waste your time, you waste your efforts. The people that, if the application requires references, you write to people, they expend their energy, their time, their resources to write you a recommendation, only for you to, and these things, they have a way of they have a way of, I would say, denting how people perceive you, and it kind of tends to affect us later on in life. So you are reaching out to a particular person to write a reference for you, and you've not even read through the application in the way that you should. And then it turns out that you're not even qualified, for instance, or it's in a field that you don't even have any experience for. It's not like you're even going in that direction, but as long as it's a global opportunity, let me just apply. There are people like that. Oh, this one, I'm applying. Oh, this one, I'm applying. Oh, this one, I'm applying. So understanding the application is key. And there's a lot to say about that, but for sake of time, I think it's important to just highlight, most importantly, that you need to take your time to understand the application. And the first thing, low level or low hanging fruit approach to understanding the application is reading the eligibility criteria. First of all, there are other things you would need to do. I mean, going to the application website, for instance, reading what the organization even does. Some people don't spend time to read what the organization does. They just go straight to start applying. So it's very important. And then the last point is kind of tied to the first, which is dealing with fear or imposter syndrome. I find that it's a big challenge, especially in this part of the world where we tend to be we're not as vocal in that sense. Many of us, when we're growing up, we're taught to be like, you don't ask questions, you are quiet, you can't express yourself. I know a lot of that is changing now, but for those of us who were born like way many years ago, like way before now, that's the culture that many of us grew up with. So you find out that even when you've done your homework, you have a track record, like you actually have things that you can put into the application. You find yourself struggling with, am I good enough? This thing that I'm even doing, sir, am I sure I'll get it? And the challenge with that kind of mindset is you're already defeated from the beginning. If you approach any application with that mindset, you stand a very low chance of being selected, because the mindset would reflect in how you write the application. Even if you scale through the application and you get to say an interview stage, if the application does require interviews, you find out that you are not able to speak to the things that you've written, even though they may be what you've actually done. But that mindset has a way of layering on top of every other thing that you might say or you might give off, whether at the interview stage or whatever other stages involved in the application. So it's really important to deal with that. Perhaps we'll have to discuss dealing with that, like practical strategies for dealing with that in another session, but not this. The second part is during the application. There are principles for writing. A lot of us are already familiar with many of these, particularly for scholarship opportunities. And I find that many times the same thing kind of applies for fellowships as well. A common approach is the STAR approach. So you have STAR, the STAR approach. You have the situation, the task, the action you took, and the results. I know there's also the STAR with an extra R approach, where the last R stands for reflection. So a lot of these things are not new. Again, this is why we emphasize the God advantage, because knowledge is democratized. After a while, many people will understand that these principles, or rather these applications or these opportunities, tend to follow similar patterns. They'll ask you to answer your essays in a certain format or using a certain framework, like the STAR framework. So what then will set you apart? If everybody now knows STAR, although I obviously acknowledge that in the midst of knowledge, a lot of knowledge, there can still be ignorance, right? That part is there. But generally, people tend to, if you attend any scholarship webinar or any fellowship webinar, or any global opportunity webinar, that a lot of these principles tend to play out. It's usually the same thing, right? So, but it doesn't mean that, I mean, these principles they've been found to work, they've been found to be effective. So it's also important to highlight them. Like I said earlier, for instance, the STAR approach. If you're writing any essay, you have to describe the situation. What did you now do? And maybe I'll show that if we have some time. I'll show that with one of my Chibnin essays. Is it Chibnin? Anyways, yeah. The situation, the task, what did you do? Sorry, the task, what was to be done? The action, what did you do? And then what was the result? The R. And then the last R, reflecting. When you reflect on it, what did you learn from the experience? What could you have done better? Then another thing is reviews. If you have the opportunity to send your application to people to review, people who you feel have a track record with this, who have gone ahead of you and are able to offer you sound counsel, please go ahead. But don't ask them at the point of applying that, I want to send, you should prepare them ahead of time, because these guys will also be doing other things. So you don't expect that they are at your beck and call, waiting for anytime you have the application, or you're ready with the application, you just send it to review. It's important to let people know ahead of time. Again, this is tied to how you are able to build relationships with people. And I also acknowledge that sometimes things can be impromptu, but again, it's a function of how you are perceived as a person and the kind of relationship or your approach to relationship building. These things find a way of, they always play out. And if you find that you are wanting in that area, you just find that many times these things fall through the cracks if you've not done the homework before now. Again, but this is also why we're talking about this, because the best time to start is now. And then the post-application bits, managing your documentation. So you've applied for a scholarship, for instance, it should be well documented. The documents where you wrote your essays, for instance, say you're applying for Chivnin, document it. The resources that you consulted when you were applying, put them in a folder. Many times you realize that as time goes on, many of these opportunities you can pick from, because it's your story. This is an experience. These are experiences that you've had. You can't delete the experience. Let me put it that way. You can only tailor the experiences to match certain opportunities that you're applying for. Some of them will play out across different opportunities. Some will be completely new experiences. But the important thing is documenting it well, documenting all of the applications you've written so that it's easy for you to refer to them when you do need to. And then while expecting feedback, what do? You're not just going to sit there and say, oh, I applied to this, I'm expecting feedback. The onus lies on you to keep working on yourself. For some people, because they know that an application requires that you volunteer for something, it's during that window that they'll quickly volunteer. And then when they are done, you're like, okay, I'm done. It just shows that it's really not the kind of person you are, right? So these things are important because you're not approaching it from a transactional point of view. Let me put it that way. It's from a genuine desire to build yourself, to work on yourself. So it's very important while you are waiting what you should be doing. It's not the end of the world. Your life is not on pause because you applied for something. While you're expecting feedback, you have to keep working on yourself, reading more about the opportunity. Because if you get to interview stage, for instance, they'll ask you more questions. You would need to show that you are prepared. You would need to show that you're even the one that wrote the application, that put in the application in the first place. So Goodness, do you want to share any more insights on this before we move to common pitfalls? Goodness, are you there? You are muted if you are trying to speak. Okay, perhaps we'll address them. If she has any other thing to say, we can address them in the Q&A. I'll just move quickly to common pitfalls to avoid. First of all I think I've highlighted this already, trivializing the application guidelines. That's something that a lot of people do. You don't take your time to read through the application. When I applied to Chivnin, I combed through the Chivnin website. You know how websites will have, like, apart from what's the content on the website, then you have blogs, then you have resources that, like, links that take you to external resources and all that. I combed through that Chivnin website. I read the blogs, I read the FAQs, like I looked through everything. And I'll show you guys one particular I think it was a blog post or so. I'll show you guys. That one was very, very instrumental in my application. But yes, it's important. Don't trivialize the guidelines. Read through the website. Like prepare ahead. Prepare ahead. When you look at an application, again, this is a function of when you even see the application. But when you look at it and you gauge the timeline, create a plan. Oh, by XYZ time, I should have looked through the application. By so and so time, I should have come up with my first draft so that it makes it easier when you're even sending out the application for someone else to review. Another point to note is using cliche words. I think this thing is is a problem. It's a serious problem. A lot of people have been saying they are passionate. I'm always passionate. I'm passionate about this. When I was 2 years old, I realized that there was a problem in my community, and I'm passionate. Like, if you're reading some of those applications, if you were the one reviewing those applications, you would realize that there's a way people can write things and you know that this thing is not genuine. Like, it's so cliche that it makes you very inauthentic. So we really, really have to pay attention to that. Don't forget that your application is one out of God knows how many thousands of applications that these people have to read, the assessors have to read. Of course, they will probably use AI to even first sieve out a large portion of the applications. But when your application does get to the stage where someone actually reads it, it's important to ensure that your application is worth their time. Let me put it that way. Another thing is exaggerating and lying. A lot of people, there's a thing, sometimes it looks like there's a thin line between exaggerating and lying. Like, oh, yeah, there's a way you can magnify what you've done that it looks like, in all honesty, this is not really what it is. You've magnified it in such a way that if you were sat down to explain it to yourself, you struggle. So we need to be wary of those things, particularly in for people they feel like desperate. Oh, I've applied for this thing XYZ number of times. This time around, this application must, this one must succeed. I have to do this. And then you tend to, there's that tendency or that propensity to want to exaggerate things. And I find out that at the end of the day, there's a way this thing falls through the cracks. When you're not telling the truth, someone can sit in front of you and listen to you speak, and they know that this person is not telling the truth, right? It always just plays out one way or the other. So it's something that we need to ensure. I mean, for those who are, okay, let me skip that part. The next point I'll say is, or I would highlight, is using we a lot, particularly if you're applying for fellowships and a lot of these scholarships anyways. I was in that pit in my first children application because it was the second one I got into. The first one, I think I started applying like 3 days before or so. When I read the application, I knew that if I were children, I would not select myself, But the next year, I came back stronger and better. I did my homework. And of course, I labored with the grace of God that was with me. So back to the point, using we a lot. Oh, we were in a team that formed da 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 da. We were able to achieve da 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 da. Fantastic. You can show the place of teamwork, but these guys are more concerned about what you did as a person. What was your input in that result? If you are using the STAR approach, the situation, there was a task to be done. The action is what you did. What did you do as a person, and what was the result? So there's need to balance the use of we to show teamwork and the use of I to show your own specific contribution. And it's something to really pay attention to. Another point is procrastination. This one is a serious problem because people tend, 2 days to, all of a sudden, I want to apply for this, I want to apply. The people that are spending 8 months to run through an entire application process, like Chivnin, for instance, then you want to apply 2 days to the deadline, and you think that it doesn't work that way. First of all, you won't even be in the right frame of mind because you'll be rushing. You won't have the time to really look through resources that you should look at. You'll put your reviewers under pressure, which will be a challenge. You will not even have eyes to see whatever feedback that they are giving you because you yourself are under pressure. So there are so many challenges with procrastination, and it's something that can be avoided, should be avoided. The last point, this is not exhaustive, by the way. These are just common pitfalls like we identified that tend to stand out in many people's applications. Putting all your eggs in one basket, for instance, Chibney, you find people applying, I've applied for this scholarship, for instance, and then you don't do anything else. Again, I'm careful to say this because there's also the place of God leading you, like, this is what you should do. This is it. It doesn't mean that everything that your application is not like tracts. For those that know those days where we used to share tracts during evangelism, it's not like tracts that you just keep sharing to anywhere you just say application, you just keep sharing. No, it's not like that. But there's also the bit where you are exploring other opportunities, right? So understanding that balance is very important. Yeah, let me move quickly. Goodness, do you want to say something before we move to the exercise bits? If you're able to speak now.
No, it's fine. I think we can move to the exercise bits, and maybe we should check with folks because it's already 8. So if it's fine
Okay.
that they would want to stay longer.
Yes, please. So I'll just like to ask very quickly, are we happy to spend an extra 30 minutes to just run through? I've chosen Chivlin because I think it's the buzz application at the moment, and it might be useful for quite a number of people who want to apply to Chivlin this year. So if you are happy to spend an extra 30 minutes, please just let me know. You can just put a thumbs up or drop a message in the chat, and then we'll try to wrap it up as soon as we can. I'm only seeing one person's response. Are we good to go? Good to go, good to go. Okay, I see a couple of yeses. Let's just move very quickly. So the children application is perhaps one of the three most, I don't know whether to say three or four. Anyways, it's one of the most popular applications, particularly in Nigeria and Africa generally. Of course, it's not an African scholarship, but what I mean by in Africa is a lot of Nigerians tend to apply for Chivnin. So you have Chivnin, you have Commonwealth, you have I think the Erasmus, yeah, the Erasmus Mundus scholarship. You have DAD as well, where you get to study in Germany. But Chivnin is a lot. Like a lot of people from Nigeria I think Nigeria tends to have the largest number of applications across the world, actually. So that's why I've chosen to highlight Chivnin. For those who do not know, Chivnin is a UK government scholarship where it's for postgraduate study in the UK. Postgraduate, particularly masters, not PhD. So I think it's Commonwealth that does PhD, but Chivnin does just masters, and you get a fully funded scholarship to go study for your masters in the UK. And it's like everything is sorted, your fees, your stipends. So they give you stipends, monthly stipends that cover your housing, your feeding, just basics and all that. And the idea behind Chivnin is you're supposed to go to the UK once you are done. You're expected to come back to your home country and spend 2 years applying what you've learned while you were in the UK. Now, a couple of things have changed this year with Chivnin, and that is why I've highlighted them. And we'll look at them. I'll show us the things that have changed. But generally, Chivnin is usually made up of 4 essays. You have a leadership essay, you have networking and relationship building, you have a study in the UK essay, and then you have a career plan essay. And you are assessed across those four essay categories. And then there are also other requirements. For instance, they say that you must have an undergraduate degree. You have to have a certain number of hours to qualify as work experience. What else? Then basic documentation, like any opportunity or any scholarship would require. But the changes that have been made now, what I'll do is let me stop sharing this. Just hang on a bit so that I can go straight to the new application updates. Okay, so yeah. This just highlights the eligibility criteria for Chivnin. You have to be a citizen of a Chivnin eligible country. Obviously, this will mean that if you're applying for Chivnin, you need to go and check whether your country is eligible. Yes, Nigeria is eligible, so you can scratch that out. You see this line, commit to returning to your home country for at least 2 years after your scholarship ends. It's very important, and expectedly, you should find a way of highlighting this in your essay, because they need to show, the only way they can know that you are committing to returning is that they are able to see it in how you communicate through your essays, because they are not going to, the only time they will get to see you would be if you qualify for the interview. Then you can have conversations with them and they can learn more about you and your work. But at the point of applying, the first application stage where you're submitting your essays, they can't see that you're committing. You don't have the chance to converse with them to tell them you're committing to returning to your home country. So it means that you have to show it in your essays in one way or the other. Now, the third point says you should have at least 2,800 hours of work experience after graduating. So in previous Chivnin, these updates, you didn't have to have this number of hours after your graduation. So if you were working, internships, volunteering, whatever it was you were doing, even during your undergrad, would count as part of the 2,800 hours of work experience. So this is the new update. It has to be after your graduation, after graduating. And then, of course, you have to hold, well, for your work experience to count after graduation, it's kind of already implies that you would hold an undergraduate degree that qualifies for a UK master's program, and then you show, obviously there's a deadline, you need to be aware of the deadline. And then the last point is applying to 3 different and eligible UK university courses. Now they've highlighted here the 2 updates, and they've told us why those changes have been made. So for instance, here it says they are looking for future leaders who can demonstrate commitment to achieve positive change in their chosen field. And they go on and on to explain why the work experience they require is after graduation and not before. And they also list the kind of work experience. So it means that when you're applying, you should look out for these. These are the kind of things that will pass for work experience. And then this part where it says, read more about our work experience. A lot of times people don't bother with this. Oh, okay, these 4 categories is fine. But it's also important to go through. Again, you can only do this when you have time, if you had started early. So all of these things have a way of, working together. Let me put it that way. And then here they've highlighted why the changes have been made. Another thing that I noticed that they've done is they've then built their application around thematic areas. Let me see if I can find those thematic areas. Okay, I can't find it at this time, but then the bottom line is just paying attention to looking through the website and the instructions like we identified earlier. I'll just hang on a bit. Let me go back to, okay, let me not share this because of time. Let me go back to, there was a website I mentioned that I needed to show us that really helped me, and it is this particular website. Where did I go wrong? I'll just hang on a bit. Yeah. So I used this particular blog post to mark my chevening essay when I wrote my chevening essay. So this write-up contains like feedback from the reading committee on, obviously as a reading committee, they would have read through God knows how many number of applications. So they are able to tell you what would pass as an excellent application and what would pass as a kind of application. And they've documented this in this blog post. So they show you what a strong leadership and influence essay would look like, what a weak leadership and influence essay would look like. And they've highlighted this and included recommendations. This is the STAR one I was telling, the STAR framework I had mentioned earlier. And this part where it says focus less on we and team and then focus more on I, But then I would highly recommend this. I would put this in the chat for those who might be interested. You can always go back to this to have a look at it. Yeah. So let me just quickly highlight one part of my essay, my study in the UK essay, just to kind of show us. Again, like I said, when I applied for this was 2022, yeah? Yeah, 2022. So with the new updates, things may have changed. It's important to go back to the Chevening website and check them out. Again, like I said, would have resources that would share with you. You can always refer to them because there's no time to go over a lot of these application tips and strategies. So we'll just refer you to resources that I know personally I can recommend to say these guys are doing a lot of good work with scholarships and generally global opportunities, and they'll be able to provide more guidance. So for my study in the UK essay, for instance, if you're able to see it, the question is outline why you have selected your chosen 3 university courses and explain how this relates to your previous academic or professional experience. 3 things. Once they tell you, outline why you have selected your chosen university courses, by default, it means that you should have an idea of the courses that you've chosen at the point of applying. Because I know some people have come to me to say, oh, do you have to know the schools you are going to before you apply for Chevening? When people ask that question, I already know that they've not really read through the Chevening website, because if you've read through the website and you see that in your essays, you need to show that you have chosen three, doesn't necessarily mean you've applied to the schools, but you already have 3 schools that you have in mind to apply to in the UK, right? If you're asking the question, it means that you've not read that part, because how are you going to answer the study in the UK question if you don't have the courses that you've chosen and the schools that you've chosen? So for me, my approach is typically to look at the question and highlight the key points in that question, why you have chosen. That's the first part. Explain how this relates to your previous academic or professional experience. Explain how. It means that you should try to connect the dots. The schools that I've chosen, what's the connection between the schools I've chosen and my previous academic or professional experience? And your plans for the future. Sorry, what was that? So that's the first, and that's the approach I usually take. Highlight what I believe that they really want to see, right? And then there's another part that says, please enter new information and examples here and not duplicate the information you have entered in your work experience. So there are other parts of, apart from the 4 Chevening essays, there are other parts of the application that you would need to fill in, like your work experience, and your basic bio data, which is typical of any application. So they are saying here that don't replicate what you've written there already. Give us something new, you know. And this is how I chose to answer the question. I was applying for a master's in public policy and public admin, either public policy as a standalone course or public admin and public policy. And like I mentioned in my story, I had worked in Kaduna State government and I was working in a think tank at that time, well, still at this time. So it was easy for me to bring my experience from Kaduna State, my experience understanding how policy works, and then connecting it with my experience with the think tank, because it was a public policy think tank, right? Bringing it together and then looking at the schools that I had chosen, the courses I had chosen, and how they related to it. It goes without saying that at the point where I'm applying for or writing these essays, I would have looked through the university courses and I would have looked at each of those courses, their modules, not just looking at the course and choosing something. I would have looked at their modules. Oh, this course A, maybe MA in public policy. I'll look at the course content. I'll look at the modules. I'll look at the lecturers. That's how far you go. It shows the depth of research that you have. I'll look at the lecturers. I'll look at their research interests and see how they relate to maybe work that I've done in the past or work that I'm interested in the future. By the time you combine all these things and you put them in the essay, even the person reading will know that you've done your work. It's not that you just go and say, oh, I like this university. I've chosen this course in this university because the university is beautiful. Fantastic. The university can be beautiful, but that cannot be the only reason why you've chosen a course. You've already seen from the question that there are certain things that they want you to see. So those are the things that are important for you to highlight in your application. For example, because of time, I won't go through this preamble, but what I was trying to establish here was to create the context within which I even wanted to study for a master's in public policy, right? That was the context. And then I went straight, easy peasy. You already have a word count, 500 words, although this has changed. I think in the new application now, you have 300 words. So you can only write 300 words. And for me, I feel like it's a good thing because it helps you compress and articulate your thoughts well with fewer words. If you are able to, with 500 words or with longer words, you tend to talk a lot or write a lot. And if you're not making sense from the beginning, again, we're human beings. It's human beings that will assess your application. So they will just get bored, like, what's this person saying? And then just move to the next. But with fewer words, and you, like one of my lecturers will say, he calls it bluff, BLUF, bottom line up front. You just go straight to the point. This is why I've chosen this da 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 da. You are very articulate. It makes it easier for the person assessing your essays. So this is what I did. I broke down, knowing the number of words I had. I calculated what, of course, there are 3 schools. Each school would take a paragraph. This was my approach. And then apart from the paragraphs, there'll be an introduction and there'll be a small conclusion. That was the framework I approached this particular question with. So I picked my first choice. Yes, there's a history of academic excellence in UCL, world-class impact. Then I went further to highlight specific modules and the lecturers taking those modules. I linked it to the work that I currently do. So it says, will support my current work on helping states improve their economic competitiveness for sustainable economic prosperity, bearing in mind that I had highlighted that I have this work experience in the work experience session without necessarily repeating it here. But what I tried to do with these essays was to connect the dots. I did the same thing with the second school, MSc, University of Exeter. I mentioned particular modules, I mentioned how this would relate to my current work. And anyways, the idea is if you do your research well and you focus on understanding the question first and the key points, put yourself in the mind of the reader. I think that's one thing that is important to identify, putting yourself in the mind of the reader. If I were the one reading this question or reading the answer to this question, what would I like to see as the answer? That's usually helpful. So this was what I did. After touching on the three courses, then I went straight to the last part. Oh, what would a master's as a Chevening scholar do for me? I talked about the Chevening community because it's a very big and prestigious community. I talked about my work. And then, there was something they said I highlighted in the eligibility criteria that you have to commit to returning to your country. This is how I highlighted that in my essay. Because at that time, there was a lot of brain drain. Like a lot of people were leaving the country. I know a lot of people are still living, but this was my own way of communicating to them that, hey, I'm not about to stay in the UK after my master's. I plan to return. And really, it wasn't even about Chevening's requirements. It was just a desire to be back. I've not had any reason to relocate to anywhere. And until that happens, Niger for life, we're here. So yeah, I just thought to share that to guide if there's anyone who, I know a lot of people might be applying to Chevening this year. Unfortunately, I may not be able to share the other essays because again, sometimes you find that people just literally copy and paste someone else's essay. That wouldn't do any good. I don't want to believe anybody here will be doing that, but I hope that just that one essay and how I approached it would be useful for you if you're applying to Chevening. And in fact, any other scholarship opportunity anyway, or even fellowship or internship is understanding the question, which is also a function of understanding the application. It's just like it creates a knock-on effect on many other things. Understanding yourself, understanding the application, knowing how to even detail your work. Oh, how does this match? So another thing I do is I kind of create a comparative analysis. That's too serious. What I'm trying to say is I try to match my work experience with the eligibility. Oh, you have to do this. Maybe the eligibility says proven experience or demonstrated experience in graphic design. That's not me. I'm just giving an example. Graphic design, UI, UX design, and whatnot. Then I'll look at what part of my work experience speaks to that. Oh, okay, I can create a direct link. Once I'm able to match each of those eligibility criteria to the work that I've done, it helps me to better articulate myself in writing those applications. Again, I know there are instances where everything on the eligibility criteria or the job description, if it's for jobs, might not be, you don't have to match it 100%. There are instances where you look at it, there's one or two parts that is missing. This part, I don't have this. It doesn't stop you from applying. It doesn't stop you from applying. The onus still lies on you to look at it. Oh, okay, is this what I want, first of all? Because all of this, bearing in mind, all of this is within the context of a person who is led by the Spirit of God. You're not just, I said it earlier, your application is not like tracked. You're not just sharing everything that is happening. I'm applying. There's some people like that. I'm applying or anything that I'm just applying. No, that's not how we're approaching life. We're approaching life from a particular mindset. And so if there are instances where you feel like, oh, I'm not 100%, I don't tick all the boxes on this, and you feel, you've sought counsel, you've looked at it within, you've checked with your spirit, and you feel like, go ahead, oh, God is asking me to do this. Why not? If not, when I applied for KIF, I wasn't 100%. Bearing in mind, I was a bank worker. I won't call myself a banker. I see the Tony Elumelus, the Foladeolas, those are the bankers, like they're the people who own the banks. Those that work in the bank. No offense to those who work in banks here, because I used to work in the bank, but I just feel like I can't call myself a banker. I'm a bank worker. I work in the bank. But then I was saying that I was in a bank, coming from a bank straight to Koinonia SOM, and why would I, on what basis would I even apply for the Kashim Ibrahim Fellowship in public leadership, and then get it? I didn't tick all the boxes, but we don't have time to really dive into the story. But anyways, the bottom line of what I'm saying is there are instances where you might not tick all the boxes. Still, check. If you want to go ahead, you sought counsel, you think that you can do this, you feel that when you tailor your application in a certain way, there are areas where you can highlight that can cover for what you think might be a seeming inadequacy. Please go for it. I think that's about that. Let me see if there's anything I'm missing. No, let me go back to the slides. Yeah. Okay, so we've touched the application updates. It's important to go back and check. And we've looked at the guidelines. We've looked at common pitfalls to avoid and all. Goodness, is there anything you want to add to this bit? Otherwise, you can just go to Q&A because I imagine that people would have questions they would like to ask.
Yeah, I think that it may be valuable for me to give more response to Q&A.
Yeah, okay, great. So please, if you do have, let me stop sharing this so that I can see people's responses. If you do have a question to ask, please raise your hand so it's easy for us to find you. Okay, I see. Let me start with Deborah, because she had her hands up in the first session. Debbie, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Goodness and Oyin. Really appreciate it. For me, my question would be on the back of Nwadima's question the other time, which is especially on relationships when it comes to references. For someone who has been out of school for a while and did not exactly follow up on relationships with lecturers after school, what do you advise? What's the best way to get references? Because again, the ones I thought I had a relationship with when I was in school, after school, trying to get them to provide academic references rather, their response was quite discouraging, so to say. So since there has been like a deterrent to apply for these scholarships, because then I need academic references and the people I created a relationship with are not exactly forthcoming in that regard. So what do you advise to bridge that gap and then get the reference sorted? Thank you.
Okay, before I answer the question, I remember there was something I forgot to mention in terms of accessing opportunities. People tend to focus on the more prominent or Chevening, Commonwealth and all that, but forget that some of these schools also have scholarship opportunities. If you go to the school website, you'll be surprised that there are opportunities there that people don't, not because they are not available, but because people just don't think to go to the websites to check. So it's an important thing that I think needs to be highlighted. Going to the school websites in themselves to search for some of these opportunities. Then to your question, so I think first of all is identifying the different kinds of references. Of course, there are academic references and there are professional references. From my experience, some schools require academic references. Say, for instance, if they ask for 2 references, they may say 1 academic, 1 professional. Some may say 2 professional, some may say 2 academic. It all depends. But in those kind of instances, what I would advise is if you're not able to, you've tried all your possible best to get an academic reference and you're not able to, you might explore the option of writing to the school to say, oh, you have a professional reference in XYZ regard. Is this an option? Can you explore it? And the reason I'm saying this is because another challenge I've observed with many people is, I don't know if it's the fear or I don't know what it is, but people tend to, they don't ask questions. Let me put it that way. They don't explore. They just feel like, this school, they've asked me for application fee. I cannot afford this thing. No. We've had instances where people would write to the school and say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't afford this. I'm not saying lie about your situation, but just being open and saying, oh, I'm unable to afford this. If you truly cannot afford this, you'll be surprised that these schools will reach back to you. Many of them are not like the experience, no shades to Nigerian schools, but we all know that some of these things are very Herculean in our own context. But many of these schools, they are very approachable. You reach out to them and say, oh, this is my situation. I'm unable to get an academic reference in XYZ. Can I explore a professional reference? you'd be surprised that they would agree to it, you know. So it all depends on the school and how you are able to engage with them and negotiate, you know. At the same time, still trying to, as much as possible, get an academic reference. One thing I also did that might be useful is you might not be able to get from the lecturers in that sense, but there may be people who are doing their PhDs, like younger people. Maybe they were your seniors in school. You guys were not in the same set. They were your seniors. They studied the same course, and then they went back to your school and they are now doing their PhD. Maybe they are a research assistant or something like that. You could also explore that. That might work. And you tell the school, oh, this is the kind of reference you have. It might be easier for you to engage such people as opposed to your lecturers. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Chidima, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Oyin, and thank you very much, Goodness, for this session. It's been quite insightful. So, on to my question. So, say you're applying for a program, scholarship, whatever it may be, and then they are requesting. So, this question is quite peculiar because that's a challenge I have right now. So, they are requesting that you provide your professional experience. So, they're asking you to like draft your maybe CV, resume, whatever, and provide your professional experience separately, and then a leadership slash volunteering experience. But for me, the challenge now is both all of my volunteering experiences have actually been leadership roles. So, having to take on leadership roles, but you're actually volunteering. It's not like, you're being paid for it. And my professional experiences to have also been in the space of volunteering to do something, as it were. So how do I delineate what to put in for professional experience? That is aside, I'm a medical doctor, by the way, so that is aside my capacities in terms of working in the clinical space. So how do I delineate that from other leadership come professional experiences, come volunteering experiences? Quite difficult to do that delineation right now. So I would really need help with that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Goodness, do you want to answer that question?
Okay, let me make an attempt. I would say that given the training requirements that you should speak about your work experience after graduation, that's the first point of reference. So identify those experiences at least 2 years that you have that is after your graduation. Then, which of those experiences helps tell your story better? Is it the volunteering experience, or is it the professional experience, as you call it, say maybe in your workplace where you are being paid for, or you are being paid for that? I like this picture. Okay, let me go back to answering your question. So it's important that you are aligning your response to what is being asked, because sometimes it may seem like, oh, I have so many experiences, but how relevant are they to the question being asked? So take for example, if the volunteering experience you have, again, post graduation, are relevant to you showing leadership, taking up leadership, by all means, you should spotlight that or give room to, discuss that in your essay. That's the leadership bit. Or if there's a connection between your leadership essay and your professional development work you're doing in terms of networking, because there's a way that your story builds into each other. While they are distinct stories which you are sharing, to encourage that you're able to provide distinct stories across the essays, there should be a sync. They should be able to see an alignment. It could be the same organization, but you have had like clear examples of your ability to maximize your network for impact. So I would say it's not this or that, but it is actually sitting with those stories, outlining what you have done, and seeing which is the better fit, which am I able to tell a better story, which has been able to create more impact, and how has this shaped the career choices I'm making academic wise, like with these experiences I've had, how is it relevant to the courses I want to study or the course I want to study? So it's possible that the volunteering experience is not as closely relevant, or maybe the professional development experience is not as closely relevant to what you want to pursue. or maybe your long-term goals. So if there's a way you see that alignment in any of those stories, then type in. I was also in that place of confusion when I was writing my essay to say which of these should I write, which of them should I not write. But by the time I started working on the stories, I could see that, oh, I can see a sync with this impact I have done, taking leadership, and where the networking came from, how this started from, and it builds into each other. Or a different project I had worked on, which has had broader impacts, which continues to maybe shape or do XYZ, XYZ at present, right? So think about the sync, think about the relevance, think about which meets the qualification or the question being asked, and also think about which shows that you are somebody who is future thinking, forward thinking. Children is looking for leaders. Children is also thinking of looking for leaders who are future thinking. That is, they already have somewhat solid plan for themselves, with or without children. They have a solid plan on how to maximize children, and they already created those platforms. It's not that you're expecting children to come and create that platform for you. So that's what I'm going to say. Then a point came to my mind, which is unrelated to your question, which I think I should share. I will greatly encourage all of you to please, please, please do not put all your eggs in one basket. Right, maybe Oyin has already emphasized on this, but there's so many opportunities in different parts of the world. So explore as many as possible. The world is your oyster. The Bible says that the earth is the Lord and its fullness thereof. So because you're a child of God, explore the many things in this world. Nobody's going to do the work for you. You have to do your research, you have to make your inquiries, you have to seek support from relevant people who may have gotten those. You're not entitled to their support. So if they are able to find, if they're not able to, God will grant you grace to pull through and find support. So it's important so that you're not disappointed. Children is not meant for everybody, right? And I'm not saying this because you may be thinking, is it that special? It's not about you being special, it's about where God is directing you to. So some of you are not interested in staying, coming back to Nigeria after your study, you're looking for Japa. So think through all of this and prepare accordingly. And another point I wanted to add is that for some people who are on this call, they may not have yet built that capacity for some of these opportunities. It's good for you to be truthful to yourself. It's good for you to say, I'm still building my story, right? And I would say what you should be doing is getting acquainted with the requirement. Before I applied for Children, I used 2 years to study the requirement, not reading just the Children website. Oh, yes, I read the Children website so that I'll stop asking people questions that they've already studied the website. Please make it easier for people to help you read. But what I did was I was already seeking resources. I'll see a webinar where there are maybe current childreners are talking about their essay and how they were able to work on it, their experience, giving tips. I will join 1 year before, 2 years before. So those opportunities are things that I think you should get acquainted with. Ask yourself, this requirement that they have asked for, how can I begin to build the capacity for it? What kind of things should I explore? We have already spoken about some of those. I have spoken about some of those. So there is a preparatory phase that you may be truthful to yourself to say, maybe I give myself 1 more year to prepare better. It could be your story, it could be the engagement that solidifies your portfolio, right? So wisdom is profitable to direct, and I feel that the wisdom of God will guide you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, goodness. Sorry, one more question, and that'll be it from me. I wanted to, by the way, I'm not applying for Achieved in any ways. It's some other scholarship. So that is not even asking me to provide professional work experience like post graduation. So it's like general professional experience somewhat. Then the second question I wanted to ask is regards talking about your research experiences. So I wanted to know if it's wise to include maybe researches you've done but currently under review by journals and bodies that you've applied to get it published. So I just wanted to know if it would be wise,
Yeah,
especially if
by
it's
all
more of
means,
that
by all
under
means,
review.
by all
Yeah.
means, I think it is
Okay.
worth
Okay.
mentioning. It is how you tell
Okay.
your story again. So again, the world of research is not just about how many publications you've got. Although in academia, the number of publications also matters. But I would say that if you're able to tie your story to what drives you in terms of the impact you are seeking to make or you have made through your research work, and how you're able to tie that into, okay, I did this and I have currently, maybe I have submitted this for publication in XYZ under peer review. That when I applied for Children, I had a couple of publications already. And I mentioned those, but it was not just saying, oh, I have 20 publications in international peer review journals. I was able to say the work I have done, I've translated it into evidence-based through writing research and publishing those. And I've also seek ways to disseminate the findings of my research in both local and international conferences, helping to shape decision making and policy engagement. So it is not that I'm just publishing to have bragging rights, but I'm able to tell you how my research is making impact, is shaping policies and practices. So again, it's how you tell your story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, goodness. Ayomide, you have your hand up. Please, let's keep it to one question for sake of time.
Yes. Hello. So firstly, to Oyin and Goodness, thank you so much for everything you've shared, your success story. Can you
Yes.
still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry
Yes,
about that.
okay. So thank you so much for sharing your success story, especially the God advantage is so inspiring and I've learned so much. So my question is more about like how to position myself for like conferences and grants and all these fully funded conferences and fellowships and things like that because that's kind of what I'm looking at. And then also being able to, because sometimes when you say don't put all of your eggs in one basket, right? Which I do not do, but I feel like how could I narrow it down to know that I'll be able to have the capacity to do all of these things, because I'm trying to apply for like fellowships, I'm trying to apply for funded conferences, and I'm just wondering how I could put everything together. What happen if all of them are just coming in at the same time? So I think that Goodness was kind of talking about how she had to do like multiple things at the same time. So I'm wondering like how did you balance that? And then also I think Oyin can speak to how to better position myself for fellowships and these opportunities. So yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I would speak on it briefly and then I would also ask goodness to goodness, if you don't mind. I think the first thing for me is understanding the why, right? Why am I applying to these things? Like what do I want to gain? What not gain in that sense, but why am I applying? Yes, there's the benefit of it, but understanding the why. The reason I say that is from experience. If you are not careful, you just find out that you are a international opportunity, what's the word now? Is it junkie? That is the word. I don't know what it's, I don't have the word right now in my head, but you just find out that you are constantly on the move. Everything you are applying, everything you are checked. Oh, this one, I'm going to Turkey today. Tomorrow I'm going. That in itself is not a bad thing. But if you are not able to understand your why, I feel like you'll lose track of it. For instance, the Mandela Washington Fellowship, some people might have applied simply because they wanted to go to the US. I mean, there's that part of the experience where you get to go to the US. Fantastic. I'm not going to deny that it was a beautiful experience, but that shouldn't be the focus of, that shouldn't be your why. That should not be the only reason why you're applying for this thing. So for me, I feel like is the understanding your why first, then genuinely sitting down with yourself and asking, why do I want to do this? How does this relate to my either my goals or professional development or aspirations and whatnot? When you're able to understand, establish the why, then the how now becomes the next question. Okay, and even the how, I feel like it's also in phases, like goodness highlighted earlier. Sometimes you might be in that phase where you are juggling multiple things together. Sometimes you might need to take one before another. You might need to take one step, take this opportunity, soak in the opportunity, get everything that you can from that opportunity, because the outputs, for want of a better word, from that opportunity might now become an input for another opportunity you are seeking. So it may not necessarily be, you may not be in that place all the time where there are so many things you are trying to apply for at the same time, you find yourself in that place. It's understanding more like creating a roadmap for where you are eventually headed. This doesn't mean that it will be clear at every point in time. It doesn't mean that at every point in time you figured out that, oh, if I apply for this one will take me here, this one will not take me there. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying that typically I feel like it starts with understanding the why. And then when you understand the why, it's easy for you to then navigate the how. What do I need to even do first before what? Because sometimes people try to apply for, goodness highlighted that as well. People try to apply for something that they should not be applying for at that time. Whereas you should be focusing on this and then the next thing and then the next thing, and all that. So understanding that why, I feel like it helps you, it gives you clarity of mind and then helps you to approach it. In understanding that why, you would also see how you can position yourself. Let me put it that way. Because everything will then culminate, everything will then aggregate into that one aspiration or that one goal that you're trying to achieve. Goodness, do you have anything to add? Or do you have any perspective you'd like to share on that?
Yes, I think that your I think that the question, you have a good problem if you have applied for multiple opportunities that are aligned to what you are pursuing, that are of interest to you, and they all come to be, right? If you are putting all those things when you have said into consideration, and then you decide to explore as many opportunities as possible, which I encourage you to do. It's a good problem to have if they all convert into yes. And how do you decide? How do you then decide what to do? First of all, I say sometimes we may disqualify ourselves from those opportunities because you are worried of what has not yet happened. Like now, you're in the application phase. You don't know whether you'll be selected or not. But it's possible that because you only apply to one and then you get rejected, you have reduced your chances of actually at least getting a yes from other opportunities you may have applied for. So say for example, there is MasterCard scholarship, there is Chevening scholarship, there is Commonwealth scholarship. Those scholarships usually come up at the same time frame, like this season, they come like back to back, right? Between now and say December. In fact, this is the season of grad school applications, and also for everybody who has been preparing since January, this is when they get to apply. And you have applied to all three, and you tell yourself that, what if I get all of them? Which one will I now go for? So I'm saying that do not worry about how you decide which of them to go for, and that discourages you from not applying. Because if you then apply to only one on the basis of that dilemma, you have restricted yourself to, you have limited your option, number one. And also, it's like taking a chance, right? What if it works? What if it doesn't work? I would say if it's aligned with what you want and you have the capacity to apply for all those options, it's a good problem to have options. I always want to live a life of options. I always want to live a life of options because that's when I bring in my analytical skill. I'm doing my comparative analysis on the opportunities that I have, the yes and the congratulations I've received, and I say, which one do I want to go for? It's a very sweet feeling. It's a very good problem to have. I'm seeking the counsel of people who may have explored those. I know people who got Chevening and then they got, say, MasterCard Foundation and they went for MasterCard Foundation or they went for Chevening. I still know somebody this year, he got Chevening scholarship, he turned it down for other reasons, right? So I'm saying that he can only make that informed decision because he has option. But when it's just one you applied for, and luckily you got that, you don't know what could have happened if you had explored others and those were more advantageous opportunities for you. So give those you feel it's something you want and it's relevant to where you are targeting a shot. Even in the process of awaiting their response or going through the phase, maybe interview phase and all, you start making more research, talking to people, and then deciding which of those, if they all come through, you would have as your first place decision, second place decision, third place decision, and why. It could be that your why could be maybe the country or post-study opportunities or career prospects or family, right? So those kind of things could be what influences decision, but you're in that place of having options to make a decision from. I don't think it's a confusing phase. It may be somewhat confusing, but you can stick wise counsel, you can make your research, and more importantly, you can seek the face of God, even from the application phase to say, what would you have me do? Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Oh, thank
Goodness.
you, Oyin.
Ayomide, I
Thank you,
hope it
goodness.
answers your question.
Yes,
I
perfection.
like
You've
that last
answered it
part.
so well.
Yeah,
You
like,
answered
what
it
would you
well.
have
Thank you
me
so
do?
much.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Any other questions? Perhaps we can take one or two and then we call it a night. Please don't forget to fill in the feedback form. You can just scan the QR code and let us know how well we were able to serve you. I don't see any hands up at the
Oyin, do you want
moment.
put the link for the form. Some people may not have.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, let me do that instead, just in case. Hang on a bit. Mm, mm, oh, oops, just a second. Okay, so I've dropped the feedback form, the link to the feedback form in the chat. Please do well to fill it so that we know how to improve. Okay, I see your hand, Maya. Please go ahead. Just quickly, we should wrap up with this question.
My question is pretty straightforward. I just wanted
Yeah.
to know because you had addressed part of it, which is why I didn't ask immediately. So you had said to make an application that is good to know that you are ready for it, and you should also not take chances. Now, there's also a place of goodness had mentioned making sure you develop yourself and have those skills um and relevant requirements that they need for most of these applications. So my question is also, how do you know that the time is right to make an application? Why I'm asking is because sometimes I've tried to make applications, but I just feel kind of off, like maybe this isn't the time. But then years goes by and I look back, I'm like, oh, I actually missed this window opportunity at some certain point. So how do you know that the time is right? Apart from people saying, oh, apply for this, but how do you know the time is right to apply for a certain thing and it's time for it to kind of, in quote, come out of your adulam of training, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, it does. It really does. I really like the question. I think that it's a combination of different factors. But I would like to say that first of all is to even interrogate the state that you are at, why you are not applying, first of all. The reason why I say it's a mix of different factors is, again, one, it could be imposter syndrome. It could be that this thing, you can actually do this, but you just don't feel good enough to do it. So if you are able to sit down with yourself and interrogate your why for not applying, it's a useful thing. Another factor that's probably the chief of itself is where you are at in seeking God's face for this. I'll give you a typical example. Like when I applied for children, the first time I applied, in all honesty, I wouldn't really say I thought through it. Like I thought thoroughly about it because obviously if I'm applying like 3 days to the deadline, I don't think anybody would have, you won't say I gave it a lot of thought. It was fire brigade. I just felt, okay, I can go ahead. Let me just move. Let me just apply. And the results showed for it. But the second time I applied, which was the time I got it, I was applying from a very informed point of view. Obviously, I was not the same person. I had done a couple of things at the time when I was applying again. It didn't mean that I wasn't still struggling with imposter syndrome, but I made peace with myself and I settled in my heart that at this point, of course, I checked with God. I sought counsel, which is why I said is multifactorial. Let me put it that way. There are many things involved. I sought counsel. It wasn't just about, oh, I think you can do this. Oh, I think you have this profile. Yes, fantastic, good. But with me, checking with my own spirit, is it time for me to do this? Checkbox. The people that think I can do it, fantastic, checkbox. Do I think I can do it? Have I dealt with the imposter syndrome? Maybe, maybe not. But do I want to go ahead regardless? Yes, I want to. By the time all of those factors are combined together, I feel like they give you the impetus to put in the application. It doesn't mean that at that point you will now get it, because there are people that everything seems to be right. They mean their profile fantastic. You find people saying they applied, for instance, for children for 11 years. I salute, I really salute those kind of people. It doesn't mean that everything will now click because all of those factors are in place. But I feel like ultimately it still rises and falls on that check in your spirit. All those other things are secondary factors. The check in your spirit, and then to be sure that the reason you've interrogated it and you're like, it's just because of imposter syndrome. It's not because I've done my homework. It's not because I don't have the profile for for this application. I have the work. It may not be 100%, it may be 100%, whichever the case may be, but you've checked with yourself. And from experience, I've sat down to have those conversations with myself, and I've said, at this point, it's time. Like when I applied for Mandela Washington last year, I sat with myself and I looked at it. Oh, why do I want to do this? Some people have said, oh, okay, you can do this. It's a good opportunity. That aside, why do I want to do this? Lord, can I go ahead to do this? Seeking counsel is there, checking with my own spirit is there, looking at what I've done, my profile, checking within me also to figure out whether or not I'm struggling with imposter syndrome. It's not as if I've done my homework. And when all of those things when they all came together, I just applied. I didn't have to, again, like I said, it doesn't mean that you will not still feel like you may feel like you're not good enough, but then you will know that it's coming from a place, can just speak to it. It's coming from a place of, I've done my own work. This one is just imposter syndrome. I'll still go ahead and make this application or these applications. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Let me
Okay.
just add a little bit to
Yes,
your
please.
response, if I may. I can very well understand that dilemma you are going through. And I would say you only stand a chance when you give it a shot. Again, after you have done everything Oyin has said, which is very important. In addition, please, you only stand a chance for anything if you try. If you disqualify yourself by not applying, you will not know whether it will be positive or negative. You don't know whether you will get congratulations or we are sorry. So the only point you stand a chance is if you give it a shot. So also, as you're analyzing all the analysis, ask yourself, am I procrastinating on this goal? Or am I chickening out of it? Imposter syndrome, blah, blah, blah. And give yourself a chance. Giving yourself a chance does not mean that it will translate to you getting that opportunity. Yes, you may have gotten all the yes and the assurance and God is leading you. But it still doesn't mean that because God is leading you, you must that particular opportunity would convert to a yes. Sometimes those rejections are part of where God is leading us to. And I'll give an example. So a friend of mine applied for a PhD opportunity in 2020. This year's 2024. Sorry, 2024. Oh God. Okay. He applied in 2024 last year. And when he applied, no, not 2024, 2023. Sorry, everything is fogging out in my head now. So when he applied in 2023, he he even had to pay somebody 70,000 naira. You know how much 7,000 naira is in 2023, like times two the value now in naira in our current economy. And this person reviewed his CV, made it an academic CV, blah, blah, blah. And he put in a solid application. In fact, the application was almost like good to go in terms of definitely getting a positive response to at least 60-70% because he had met some of the supervisors and the project coordinators and they encouraged him to apply. People who would be assessing it, right? Some of the team members. Cut the long story short, when he applied and he submitted, he made a mistake in his email address. And several weeks down the line, they were contacting him to provide more information. He did not see any of those emails. So it was just on a random day, he went to check the portal and realized that they have sent him several messages and they couldn't reach him because of the mistake. Let's say he put full stop or something in his email address. And that was how that went. Because by the time he reached out, they said they've already passed that stage and they couldn't reach him and they're sorry. He reached out to all the people he knew that seemed like God sent them destiny helpers. These people are the one that told me to apply for this. And it was very, very painful. I didn't get that particular because this is applying for a PhD from your BSc. Now, fast forward to that same year, the same, projects and story and personal essays, he applied to the University of Oxford. For everybody who knows it, Oxford is the name of its own. So you know how pretty taxing it is to apply and even to get into Oxford and the program he actually studied. And God did it, right? He got admitted into Oxford and was able to get sponsorship to do his master's. Now, fast forward to 2024 of last year, right? Ending of last year, that same department and all, they had an opening for a PhD, and he was like, let me just give this a shot. 1 year after, the same one that he did not put his CV and all, he did not put the correct email address. And he applied, he went through the different stages. This time around, it was not on the basis of somebody told him or he has somebody in there. That one has gone, it has gone. But the long and short of the story is that he eventually still got the PhD offer in that same institution, in that same department, at the timing of God. Doesn't mean that it was not God that directed him in the first phase. I would not say it is not God, but it was part of the formative process that God wanted Oxford in his portfolio, and God knows what he's working out. So even in your failure, even in your rejection, it does not still mean that it is not God that is leading you. It is that He's preparing you, He's building you, He's building you. One of my biggest mantras to young people is fail early, fail forward, and continue to trust God to direct your path.
Thank you so much, goodness. The scripture that comes to mind is God causes all things to work together for your good. Like, thank you so much. I just remembered something I also wanted to mention to Maya. That process where that part where goodness was saying that still apply. I remember that I just felt to also mention it might not be to answer your question directly, it might be for any other person thinking, oh, I don't have this opportunity yet, but you just feel a nudging to, for instance, get a passport. I know it may seem like people should ordinarily have a passport at this, an international passport is what I mean at this stage, but you'd be surprised that quite a number of people don't. Maybe they can't afford it or something of the sort. If you feel that a leading in that direction, please, by all means, go for it. Sometimes is God that is pushing you in a particular direction. You see, funny enough, this thing happened to me, and I got the IMF fellowship in 2022. Yeah, was it 2022? Or 2021 into 2022 was when I got selected for the IMF Youth Fellowship. Would you believe that, like 2 or 3 years down the line, when I was doing my master's in the UK, in York, I get this random email from the IMF saying that the IMF is 80 and that they selected a particular, out of the pool of fellows, they selected a number of fellows to come and celebrate with the IMF at DC. They were hosting the fellows. There'll be conversations around those key areas that the IMF works in based on my profile, blah, 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 and all that. Do you know, I missed the opportunity. Why? I didn't have a visa. I didn't have a US visa at the time. Although I tried to apply to, I did the whole emergency application, fast track application. It didn't work. It didn't work. And then you would wonder, oh, I got the fellowship in 2021, 2022. Then 2 years down the line, nothing happened. The fellowship was virtual. It was a really good experience, but nothing happened post the fellowship. And then 2 years down the line, someone is randomly reaching out to me from the IMF saying that they've seen my work. Even I was asking myself, which work? Because really, I'm not even the type that really posts and all that, but some of the work I'm engaged with, volunteer work and the work with my current organization. You see it on my profile and all that. Not, I don't really post like that. It's something I'm working on though, but then that's story for another day. The point I'm making is you never know what's happening behind the scenes. You don't know how God is working things out. Unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity because I didn't have a visa. If I had had a visa, it was an all expense paid trip. And I remember that, funny enough, when I first got into the UK, I was thinking to myself, it might be nice to just have a US visa. But at that point, I was like, first of all, the money to get a US visa. Number two, you know how US visas can be. Like, what would be the reason? What would be the basis for getting a visa? So I just kind of discarded the thoughts then. So when this opportunity came and we explored all the means, in fact, one of the IMF staff was saying, oh, I could go to another country or I could go to another state or something like that to see if I can get an appointment for the US visa early on enough. But I knew it wasn't going to work. I explored it, but it was going to be difficult to go to another state. I'm sorry, another country. But the point I'm making is sometimes these nudgings come. You might think that, oh, me of all people, me that I've never traveled, I've never gone out of Nigeria. It's only Ghana I've been to, or maybe it's only Ghana I've been to, or something. Oh, I've never even left my state, or I've never left my city. And you feel that nudging, please go ahead. You never know what God is working behind the scenes. Please go ahead to do it. Don't, I know it's easier said than done. You might think the subject of imposter syndrome and lack of self-confidence is not a conversation we can conclude on or deal with adequately on this call. But I'd just like to encourage you, please, if you have that nudge, go ahead, go for it. You never know when the opportunity will come calling. I just thought to mention that as well. Okay, I think we were maxed out on time. This is almost 9 o'clock. I don't see any hands up, and thank you. Let's keep it that way because we've really stretched everyone by an extra hour. I really apologize for the extra stretch. It was supposed to just be a 2-hour webinar, but I really do hope you got value from it. Please do well to fill in the feedback form, and we'll be in touch. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined, to those who shared our posts. Thank you to those who sent the link to others to join in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really, really appreciate you. For those that would like us to be in touch, would definitely be in touch. That's it from me. All the best. Please, the goal of this call, most importantly, is we're not ashamed. We're carrying Jesus everywhere we go, and it's beautiful that people can see that excellence is not limited. It's not just within the four walls of the church in that sense. We're going all out. Like Matthew 5:16, the Message translation puts it, it says, we're giving up, we're showing the God colors in the world. We're going all out. Excellence from even believers. We're letting the whole world know that the salvation that we have received extends beyond just praying in tongues, or our own gospel that we're preaching. In addition to all that, is that we're showing that excellence can come out from the church, and we're even the ones leading, setting the pace. Right. So thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't want to go into that space before I start entering. But thank you. Goodness, do you want to please say a final word, and then we would let everybody go?
I'll just say I am rooting for you all. I hope that this session in some way speaks to you and it affirms your faith, trusting God to shine your light in your professional career and your academic. God is also looking out for you and counting on you in that regard. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for having me. Have a
Thank you,
restful night
goodness.
and a great week ahead.
Thank you. I just remember the words that you said. So when we're praying about these two things, just to highlight, for someone, it says, you came for a webinar, but God has other plans. I don't know what the other plans are, but I do hope that you were able to catch some light in that regard. And God also said to us that he was going to restore hope. So we really pray and hope that for anyone here who feels you feel hopeless, or you feel like you're in despair, I hope that the webinar was able to encourage you to find light, to find strength, regardless of what challenge you might be going through. And this is just to say, God bless you all. Thank you again for joining, and enjoy the rest of the night that we haven't taken already. Bye-bye. See you guys. Bye.
Bye, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye. Thank you.